You started?
Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a beautiful, gorgeous, warm, slightly humid Monday morning or Monday afternoon here in the great state of New Jersey, and I am joined here by California on my left, Dallas and soon to be Chicago on my right, and of course Umar R.A is behind the terminal. Okay, today leading our production. Dave Chapelle sends a terrifying warning to Ice Cube after he exposes Hollywood. Okay, I want to hear it, but it's too long. It's 8 minutes long, right? Because you know Hollywood, they did a number on Dave Chapelle, and he got booted for 10 years until people changed and stuff. Then they let him back in, right? So, and also other comedians waned, so they needed some juice, and he got himself his Netflix, and he's on tour, and he's back into things and everything. So,
Is a monster. It's the same monster that these Me Too bitches trying to tell you.
all right, here we go. So, Dave Chapelle, what do you guys' opinion of Dave Chapelle? Is he the real deal, or is he what?
Have you seen that video of him talking about Hajj?
No, he went to Hajj?
He's a Muslim, right?
He's a Muslim, yeah.
Yeah, he was. He made a whole video about it. It was actually pretty nice. I think he was saying some good stuff.
Yeah,
He was making some good points. But it's funny because we had Owen Benjamin on,
yeah.
and I was just kind of looking into like Owen Benjamin, who he is, and
Yeah.
because I was curious. Apparently, he's like pretty famous.
Yeah.
And apparently, like Kanye West or whatever, he made a joke that, or not a joke, but he was saying Dave Chappelle is a copy of Owen Benjamin. Like he stole all his jokes from Owen.
I heard that a lot too before.
Yeah.
And there was a time where Benjamin was on some podcasts, and he's like this, and listing all these jokes that Chappelle ripped him off. Yeah. Some podcasts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let us turn today, as it is Monday, to this great book called Ash-Shifa by Imam Qadi Iyyad. And Qadi Iyyad was not first known, okay, for his Shifa. He was first known for his Sharh al-Muslim. And Imam Nawawi, when he writes his Sharh al-Muslim, his first go-to is the Shifa, is Qadi Iyyad Sharh al-Muslim. All over Sharh Muslim, outside the rules of, or the hadith of fiqh, right? The hadith of ahkam, because that's going to be Shafii only, right? But even them, regarding the matan of the hadith, the wording of the hadith, the first go-to of Imam Nawawi is going to be Qadi Iyyad. Open up the Sharh of Nawawi on Muslim, open up to any random page, and you will find وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي. All over the book, وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي, وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي, وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي. Why don't Omar open up Shamila and do us for us as an experiment? Just open to a random page of Sharh Muslim. Go to Tasaffuh al-Maktaba. Go to the first one. No, forget it. Just you don't need that. Go to Tasaffuh al-Maktaba. No, the first little brown box there. No, not that one. Yeah, down. No. Go back. Go back. You see the brown squares at the middle? Yeah, go to the first one. Go to that. Now go to Sharh al-Hadith or Shuruh al-Hadith. Now go to Nawawi Sharh al-Muslim. Go down. Keep going down until you see it. Right? Just keep going until you find Imam Nawawi. There. Is that it? No, that's not it. Keep going until you find Nawawi. Keep going. No, yeah, I got you. There. Is that it? No. Keep going. Keep going. Wait, is that it? Go up one more click. No, because no, we came later, 700s. Yeah, it's by date. Keep going. Okay. There, Sharh Muslim. Yeah, Sharh Nawawi. Go to a random fasl. Go to a random bab. Click anything. Go random. Now keep reading and tell me if you see something that says وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي. Al-Qadi is Qadi Iyad. So if Imam An-Nawawi, the great muhaddith, the great scholar, the scholar who he can really become, his heritage is like a fifth madhab. He's like a fifth imam. That's how massive his heritage is in Aqidah, in Hadith, in every subject. Boom, he found it. See? وَقَالَ الْقَاضِي عِيَّادْ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ. Okay, see? And what line is that of what you clicked? It's not even the fifth line, right? Like the second paragraph, fifth line down. So Imam An-Nawawi goes back to Qadi Iyad on everything. Qadi Iyad is from Marrakesh. Imam An-Nawawi is from Damascus. Anytime that scholar from the West is respected by the East, you know he has a lot of weight. Because the East tended to be self-sufficient with themselves. They don't rely on anyone from the West. They never needed to, right? The West, however, always is relying on, they always like look up to the East. You always find Eastern migration. You rarely find Western migration. Now, speaking of migration, a lot of guys from Egypt, from Syria, from Lebanon, they actually have Moroccan origins. Now, why is that? That is because when the Ottomans came in, and there were a lot of port cities, they wanted to get loyalists, people who owed their loyalty to them, to settle there and populate it with Muslims, so that their other groups don't come in and populate it. So they actually went out, incentivized people to move east. And that's why you have mass migrations from Morocco to Egypt and even Hijaz and Sham, Syria. Most Syrians, if they go back to their lineage, they'll find it'll be Moroccan. Lebanese too. A lot of Egyptians too. And that's one of the reasons, is because the Ottomans themselves were officially like making this move happen, right? And supporting it. So what we have here is the Shifa of Al-Qadi Iyad in the English language. Of course, it's always better to read it in Arabic, but it's not with us. It's probably downstairs, but that's okay. We'll suffice ourselves with the English here. Okay. Let's look at what chapter here that I find that people may have, we need to read from. Okay, what? Huh?
What's the difference between Qadi and a Mufti?
Oh, big difference between a Qadi and a Mufti. Very good question. The Qadi actually has executive power. The Qadi's ruling is, the difference between it must be acted upon. He is a government appointee. He is appointed by the king or the sultan or the khalifa. And al-qada is sifatun hukmiyatun tujibu tanfidha maqtada. So a judgment it's an attribute. It's a legal quality or attribute of a ruling, a shari'i ruling, that must be acted upon. Ala sabil al-tanfidh, or something like that. That must be acted upon. Whereas a fatwa is a legal ruling that is not binding. So if a qadi, that's one of the problems, the things with takfir in the Maliki school, and you can ask Shaykh Zuhair about this and others, is that to say that someone is a kafir is not just the work of a qadi, but it's the qadi is the only one who can act upon it. In other words, issue a ruling that so-and-so's marriage is nullified, so-and-so is to be imprisoned, and so-and-so is to be, for this heresy, for this kufri statement, and they will to be asked about it. And istitaba means that you're to ask this person to make tawbah for some number of days, bring a sheikh to talk to him, and then afterwards there's his own consequences after that. And then if they're a murtad, openly left off their religion, then they're deleted from the public record. All their wealth is immediately assumed by the state. their marriage is immediately nullified. So the Qadi is the one who will do all that. A Mufti, he's not an official at all. He's not an official. He could be, of course, there are Muftis that just answer questions, and they are appointed by states too. But also a regular person can become a Mufti. And fatwa, we divide it up into two categories, which is just istifta, right? Which is just a Q&A, like, do I have to do between my toes in wudu? It's just a Q&A. There's no fatwa there. It's just basic fiqh. So that type of person can rely upon reliable books or get educated from a sheikh and give the fatwa by that. But the Mufti and Nazila, that is the one who takes a brand new issue and then goes into the madhab, looks at what has been makes analogy by masail, questions that are inside the madhab, right? And then answers the question. And then that's a fatwa. He writes it down, he issues it, his peers look at it, and they may agree or disagree, right? So that is the Mufti fi Nazila, and that is really the end goal that we want that students should be at. I mean, if someone is a Hafidh and a Mufti fi Nazila, what else do you want, really? Think about that. Hafidh, Quran, Mufti fi Nawazil, and then sometimes they say has khilafa in the tariq. He can guide people spiritually too. What else do you want from that? Okay. Probably Shaykh Asrar Rashid is close to that. All three, I think. Yeah. Although his specialty is Aqidah more than Fiqh. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if he has ijazah to give fatwa in matters. And for the Malikiyya, probably Shaykh Rami comes closest to that. For the Malikiyya. For the Shafi'iyya, who? In the Shafii school? Huh? Shaykh Nuhs Keller. Shaykh Nuhs Keller, yeah. But in the U.S. or the England, we know a lot of Shafii scholars in, right? Maybe Shaykh Osama Salahiyya, who's very active in North Jersey. Not really known on the internet, but or a national level, but he's a massive scholar. 10 years. Let's go to the Prophet's knowledge of the unseen and future events, page 186. Now, by the way, there are some people that are going to disagree with Qadi Iyad here. I'm telling you. Some people from the Brelvia, they may disagree. But listen, I'm reading you Qadi Iyad. I'm not giving a fatwa from myself. If you don't like it, you disagree with Qadi Iyad. You can address his book and write your own critique. But as for us, we transmit the Shifa. What's in it, we transmit it as is. Shaykh Muhammad al-Yaqubi is the first one that I sat in his lessons of the Shifa of Qadi Iyad, and he taught us sections from it, not the whole thing, right? And he encouraged, in general, the reading of it. See, people sometimes they worry about reading from books. That's not the case. The case is which books and did you understand it properly? So, like as I said earlier, if someone is going to give istifta, answer questions, regular fiqh questions from a book, you can do that as long as you got the right book and you understood the words. That's the problem, right? So a lot of tulab ilm, they don't have time to study the whole book with the sheikh. They'll study portions of it. You get you get the idea, and you have an established connection with the sheikh. So if you have a question, you ask. But otherwise, you can continue reading the book. And that's, for example, what happened with me, the Dar al-Fath class with Habib Omar, and the book of Tasawwuf by Qawaid al-Tasawwuf from Sidi Ahmad Zarruq. Right? So he assesses if you generally know the content and have the ability to have the connection to ask when you don't know, have the readiness to ask, right? And are in constant communication with fuqaha who are older than you, and then you get the idhn, permission to teach it. That's how it generally works. There's so many books, they're so long, and it's very rare that someone will read a complete book with a sheikh. Okay. Section 24, the Prophet's knowledge of the unseen and future events. The hadiths on this subject are like a vast ocean whose depths cannot be plumbed and which should not cease to overflow. This is one aspect of his miracles which is definitely known. We have many hadiths which have reached us by multiple paths of transmission regarding his familiarity with the unseen. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam gave us an address in which he did not leave anything that would happen until the last hour came. Okay. Now I have a question. How would the questioner know that the Prophet didn't leave something out? Just from a logical perspective, right? So I think that's an expression, right? Because you need to know as much or more than the speaker to know that he left something or didn't leave something out, right? So I think it's an expression. Yeah, as if he's told us everything. But you cannot make that assessment unless you know everything, right? So it's not haram for us to use our brains when we read these things. It's no disrespect to a Sahabi. And we're not disrespecting, we're just understanding it properly. It's an expression because it's impossible to know that someone who is looking at something that you don't see hasn't left anything out. Okay? That's not possible. He then says, whoever remembered it, remembered it. Whoever forgot it, forgot it. Many companions of mine have known it. When any of it came to pass, I would recognize it and remember it as a man remembers the face of someone who hadn't seen in a long time. Okay. Then Hudayfa said, I do not know whether my companions may have forgotten or pretended to forget. But the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not leave out the instigator of a single disaster that was going to happen until the end of the world. There were more than 300, and he named them for us, each with his own name, the name of his father, and the name of his tribe. Okay. Abu Dharr then said, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam left us, there was not a bird that flies in the sky, but that he had given us some knowledge about it. The compilers of the Sahih and the Imams have related what he taught his companions and family about regarding his promises to them of victory over his enemies, conquest of Mecca, conquest of Jerusalem, conquest of Yemen, conquest of Syria, conquest of Iraq, and the establishment of security so that a woman would go from Hira to Iraq not fearing anything but Allah. He said that Medina would be raided and Khaybar would be conquered by Ali the next day. Okay? He foretold those parts of the world that Allah was going to open up to his community and what they would be given of its flowers and fruits, such as the treasures of the Khosrows, which is the Persian, and the Caesar of Byzantium. He told us about what would happen among them with regard to sedition, disputation, sectarianism, acting as those before them had done, splitting into sects, only one of which would be 73 sects, only one would be saved, that they would spread out in the earth, that people would come who would wear one fine garment in the morning and another in the evening, and dish after dish would be placed before them. They would embellish their houses as the Kaaba is embellished. Then he said at the end of the hadith, today you are better than you will be on that day, where people don't like to be constricted, right? They don't like to be constricted, and they like vastness of things, and they like the beauty of things. And subhanAllah, back in their time, saying that basically this saying here that the concept of having a garment of the day and a garment of the night, it's to them excess. Subhanallah. Today we have a garment for the day, a garment for the house, a garment to go out of the house, a garment if you're going to the masjid versus work. If you're going to play sports, you wear another set of clothes. You come home, you take a shower after that, you put back your house clothes on. Before you sleep, you put certain clothes on. Winter sleeping, summer sleeping, have different clothes, different sheets. It's like everything is segmented like that. Okay. So excess, though, is deemed relative to the pious Muslims of your time and place. None of what I say would be deemed excess by a regular pious Muslim today. The concept, you went with a blue thobe like that to work and wore the same garment to the gym, no, you're going to be laughed at in society, right? And we'd be the first people to say, what's with you? Okay. You misunderstood this. But he's just, so this is a description. They wear a garment in the morning and one in the evening. Relative to them, the Sahaba, this is excess. Excess is always deemed relative to the righteous Muslims of your time, not from people of the past. Okay. He said that they would strut about on the earth and the girls of Persia and Byzantium would serve them. Allah would withdraw their strength from them. They would lose their strength. They would become so soft. And the evil ones would overcome the good ones. This excess is no good. They would fight the Turks and the Khazars and Byzantium. Khosrows and Persia would be obliterated. There would be no Khosrows or Persia afterwards. Caesar would pass away. And there would be no Caesar after them. And that's true. These are true prophecies. Like, how would the Prophet ﷺ, what would make him know, alayhi salatu wasalam, that once the Persian Empire collapses, it will never come back. Likewise, the Byzantine Empire, once it collapses, it would never come back. That's a prophecy, and it came to pass. That's true. There hasn't been a Byzantine Empire or a Persian Empire since then. Okay. The noblest and best of people would be taken away. When the time grew near, knowledge would be taken away, and sedition and bloodshed would appear. Alas for the Arabs, for an evil that draws near. Okay. وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ مِنْ شَرٍّ قَدْ اقْتَرَبَ. Okay. And Arabs here means Muslims, because at the time, the only Muslims were the Arabs. Like, the symbol of Arabs and Muslims were the same people. So that's why at that time, when the Prophet said this, وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ مِنْ شَرٍّ قَدْ اقْتَرَبَ, meaning Muslims. And he used the word Arabs because that is their description. At the time, Muslims were Arabs only. And also it rhymes. Okay. The earth was rolled up for him so that he could see its eastern and western extremities, and the dominion of his community was to reach what was rolled up for him. That is why it has extended from east to west. Okay, from the Indies in the east to the Sea of Tangier in the west. Okay, beyond which there is no known civilization, because at the time of his writing, it's true that there's no known civilization at the time. It's an amazing concept of why is it that civilization spread in Asia before it spread in the Americas. And according to this theory, which I find it to be a good theory, it makes sense to me. Who knows if it's right? We'll never know. He says that the continent of Asia is generally goes east to west, and the continent of the Americas is generally north to south. And the north to south climate is radically different throughout. So Canada is radically different from Florida, which is radically different again. The seasons are flipped in South America. Okay. And so whereas if you go to, let's say, Europe, Africa, and Asia, like the bottom of Europe, the top of Africa, and all of Asia, they tend to be horizontal. And horizontal, that results in a similar climate. So that means that if I'm a farmer, I farm corn, let's say, I could farm the same thing all across. I don't have to learn new crops. So I can get better at farming corn, even if I have to move, right? And I can, and the economy becomes one and the same, right? So whereas in the north to the south, right, continent, which is north to south, it's going to develop slower, because if I ever have to move from Canada down to Florida, I got to learn a whole new set of crops, right? So the result of that, crop development and stability of food supply developed much slower in the north-south. There's less predictability, far more predictability in Asia, and hence compound that century after century, and the Asian, the Southern Europe, North Africa, and Asia, that part of the world will be, over time, light years ahead. After a long period of time, like 1,000 years, they'll be way ahead. And that's a theory, so who knows if it's true or not, but I like the theory. I like the theory that gives, like, simple explanations. Because if someone came with a theory and said, oh, no, because they had king such and such, no, that's too specific. You can't have a theory that goes across thousands of years, except that it has to be something major, like the shape of the continent, right? And it could be something that you wouldn't be able to really discern it right away, but the compounding of year after year of this, century after century, season after season, that's going to result in a bigger difference, that's more plausible to me, right? So why is it some people succeed, are far more successful than others? Sometimes the reason is that, sometimes the reason is simply that you wake up half hour earlier, right? Your body just needs 30 minutes less sleep, or you have the habit of waking up just half hour earlier than everyone else. But compound that over 5 years, over 10 years, you're achieving a lot more, right? Dean Addy telling us that we're shadow banned. Is that true? Can you go into YouTube and tell us if you can find our live stream? I don't know. People tell me this all the time. Of course, they don't like Owen Benjamin. That's probably why we got shadow banned. But they don't like me either. So from before? Maybe we should go on Rumble. The earth was rolled up. The Prophet ﷺ could see all of the civilizations or the lands that would enter his dominion. And that was not given to any other prophet. Okay. Islam did not extend to the north and the south in the same way. Rather, it extended east and west more than north and south, which is true. Didn't go up to Scandinavia, did not go to south parts of Africa or even the central parts of Africa. It generally went. See, that's exactly the point. Think about this. You have these Arabs, right? They're going to travel to the climates they're accustomed to. Going west, no problem. Go east, no problem. But go north to Scandinavia, you're going to hit a limit point. I don't know how to live in this climate, right? You're going to go south. Oh, it's not a friendly climate down south either, right? Deep into the heart of Africa, it's a tough climate for them to be in. So traveling east and west around the same line of latitude, it's easier for people than to go up and down, where the climate changes radically. The people of the West will know the truth until the hour comes, said the Prophet ﷺ, narrated in Sahih Muslim, and it tends to be considered the Ahl al-Maghrib, the Arabs of the West Africa. Ibn al-Madini believed that this refers to the Arabs because they are distinguished by drinking from a certain kind of leather bucket, al-gharb, and hence that he meant that, but that's not strong. Okay. But others, he says, believed it refers to the people of the Maghrib. That's what makes sense, because the Arabs are not the only people who drank from a leather skin. Everyone in the world drank from a leather skin. You took the leather, you made it in a certain way, or you took the stomach of the animal and they purified it in a certain way and used it as a jug to hang their water from. It's called a water skin. Anyone who's watched a Western movie knows this, right? In a hadith from Abu Umama, the Prophet ﷺ said, a group from my community will remain constant to the truth, conquering their enemy until the command of Allah comes to them while they are still in that condition. Where are they, O Messenger of Allah? In Jerusalem. Okay. So the people of Al-Quds have a khususiyya here, and they're special for this. So why is that something special? And that's something special because it implies that there will be a time where speaking about the truth will be extremely difficult. Speaking the truth in public, as it is now. And speaking the truth in public, you get shadow banned. Well, by Sharia, getting shadow banned is not a hardship, right? Hardship means you can get killed. You can get jailed. Even threatened to go to jail. Lose your job. Those are hardships, and that's what they face in Gaza. And to be honest with you, people always talk about America, the devil and stuff. No, America has spread filth, pornography, and this disgusting culture throughout the world. That's true. But overall, I don't think in the end of times, the hardship will particularly be, the physical hardship will particularly be here. I actually think that as the years pass, the United States will not be the center of attention as much as it was before, right? And that actually may end up becoming a good thing for us. Who knows? But I think that Muslims will find a lot more ability to practice their deen here and in the UK than places like Spain, France, China, right? And the Arab countries too. Even the Arab countries shut you down completely. They could never have anything like this in the Arab countries. You know that? You couldn't do it. You'd be shut down. real fast. It's insane that be a Muslim in Kansas, you have more freedom than in Cairo. Crazy. I don't know. Okay. Next, hadith. He foretold the kingdom of the Umayyads and the rule of Muawiyah, and counseled him and said that the Umayyads would make the kingdom of Allah a dynasty. He said that the descendants of Al-Abbas would emerge with black banners and would rule a far larger area than they now ruled. Okay. He said that, no source, he didn't give a source for that. The Mahdi would appear and told about what the Ahlul Bayt, the people of his house, would experience and about their slaughter and exile. Okay. He foretold the murder of Ali and said that the most wretched of people would be his killer, and that Ali would be, and that Ali would be the apportioner of the fire. His friends would enter the garden, and his enemies the fire. So he is a fasil. Okay. Among those who would oppose him are the Khawarij and the Nasibis, and a group who claimed to follow him among the Rafidhis would reject him. Okay. The Kharijites are those who went out against Sayyidina Ali, and the Nasibis are those who hate Ali and Ahlul Bayt. Okay. And the Rafidhis are those who hate the companions. So from Sayyidina Ali, you end up, because he is a shining light, pure light, meaning that from him, there's no ego. Pure light, of course, no, don't take that out of context and say that he's not a human. No, we're saying he's bashar, but we're saying his guidance is pure. Is anyone going to say there's an issue with Sayyidina Ali's guidance? How then the Prophet ﷺ said Sayyidina Ali is aqdakum Ali, the best judge of things is Ali. Aqdakum Ali. This is the Prophet ﷺ said this. When he says something and when the way he lives is pure guidance. So from him, the reactions to him are either pure guidance. If you follow him, you're on pure guidance. If you go against him, this is what the Khawarij are. And the haters of the Nasibis. Nasibi means a hater of Ahlul Bayt. And then you have the opposite, the Rafidhis. You love him too much now. You misunderstood his message and you hate the Sahaba now. When he never hated the Sahaba, right? When he has a son named Umar. Why would he name his son Umar? Okay. And he has a son named Abu Bakr Siddiq. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala joined between the lineage of Umar and the lineage of Sayyidina Ali in the great Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. In the Ja'far as-Sadiq, he's related to Abu Bakr in two different ways. Okay, this is why he said Abu Bakr gave birth to me twice. Okay, in two ways he's related to Abu Bakr. Okay, so, and from the father's line from Sayyidina Hussein, Sayyidina Ja'far as-Sadiq. So Sayyidina Ali therefore is like something about him. It just divides up those who are guided from the misguided. Whereas not every other Sahabi did this. Not other Sahaba did not have this quality, right? How you react to Sayyidina Ali, you go to excesses regarding him, or you stick with him. That's why he says he's the apportioner of the fire, meaning that when you are around, when the people gather around Sayyidina Ali, they immediately go to their extremes that are inside their hearts. That's what it means. It's like the magnetism is so strong that you will either be repelled to one excess or the other, or you'll stick with him, and your guidance will be perfect after that. The Prophet ﷺ said, Uthman will be killed while reciting the Quran, and perhaps Allah will have him wearing a shirt. They will want to remove it, and his blood will fall on the words of Allah. فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ, from the Quran, verses 2:137. Okay, this is where? Bukhari and Muslim. Okay. He said that sedition would not appear as long as Umar is alive, as Zubayr would fight against Ali. Okay. The dogs of Hawab would bark at one of his wives, and many would be killed around her, and she would barely escape. They barked at Aisha when she went to Basra. Meaning the Khawarij wanted to take her as a prisoner. Right? They want to take her as a prisoner of war. How are you going to explain that in your Sharia? Right? Their version of their Sharia. Umar is, as Sayyidina Ali is like the portion of the fire, Umar is the door between fitnah. Okay. And Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman said, there is a door between our ummah and fitnah. And Umar asked, will that door be opened so that it may be closed again? Or will it be broken so that it will never close again? He said, no, it will be broken. And that's when Sayyidina Umar knew he'd be killed. If he had just died, then there could be someone that comes just like him, right, that will establish it. Because the analogy is the analogy of a door. If you close it naturally, you can open it. If it's open naturally, you can close it naturally. But if you break it down, it'll never close again. Okay, so that by that analogy, Umar knew that he was the door between the fitnah and the ummah, and that by saying it's going to be broken down, he's going to be killed. He said about Quzman, a munafiq, he will be tested together with the Muslims, although he is one of the people of the fire. And later, Quzman was in a difficult situation and committed suicide. He was a munafiq. He said about a group which included Abu Hurairah, Samura bin Jundub, and Hudhayfa. He said, the last of you will die in a fire. Okay, they kept asking about each other to see which one of them died first. Hudhayfa died, then Abu Hurairah died, and Samura was the last one to be alive, so he knew he would die in a fire. Okay. And yet, he tried to warm himself over a fire one day, but see, this is out of the mercy, is that he became old and senile, right? And the senile, they don't have the same. When he became senile, he lit a fire to warm himself and he fell into it, right? But sometimes when people have a senility, they may not have the same feelings about things, right? So that's a mercy of Allah for him. Because if you know that you're going to die in a fire, that's not a nice thing, right? But so what did the Prophet say? He said it for his relatives, right? So that this is something preordained. So he'll tell you the bad thing that's preordained for you so you don't have to be so scared of it, right? It's something Allah has decreed this, and that's it. And we know everything's decreed, right? But when you hear it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and you receive it from a mukashafa, it gives you some kind of more tuma'nina that inshallah it's going to be good, right? The end of it will be good. It may be painful, but the end result will be good. There was one person one time, he received a mukashafa that something bad would happen. He became so scared, asked Allah to push it away, push it away, push it away, push it away. And he forgot about it. Then later on, he was shown that the replacement of that thing was far better. And then he didn't mind it anymore. So he stopped making dua for it to be pushed away. Right? So he said about Handala. Handala, of course, is the one Ghasilul Malaika, right? The one the Malaika washed him. He asked his wife about him. I saw the angels washing him. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ said. So they asked her, why would the Prophet see the angels washing him? She said, we had just married. He left in janaba to the jihad before he could do a ghusl. He said, that's why we saw the angels washing him. That's from Ibn Ishaq. The Prophet ﷺ said, al-khilafa fi Quraysh. Okay. The business, this will remain with Quraysh as long as they establish the deen. There will be a liar and a destroyer from Thaqif. This is from Muslim and Bukhari, and many people think that it refers to whom? Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, of course. He said that Musaylima would be destroyed by Allah and that Fatima will be the first of his family to follow him to the grave. Both of them were true. He warned about the Rida and said that the caliphate after him would last for 30 years and that it would then become monarchy. And this is exactly what happened. Okay, right after the time of Hassan ibn Ali, it went to Muawiyah and he announced that it's now a monarchy. Meaning that he meant by it, it's not safe to do things the way in which we trust the whole ummah anymore. So the history of the ummah of the Khilafah is described like this. The time of Abu Bakr and Umar and half the time of Uthman, The rulers were pious and the bulk of the people were pious. From the 6th year, after the 6th year of Sayyidina Uthman's time, all through Sayyidina Ali's time, through Sayyidina al-Hasan's time, the rulers were pious, but the people had become mixed up and many Sahaba died, so the people could no longer be described as pious. And then after that, the rulers and the people were unknown, right? It could be, could go either way. But Sayyidina Muawiyah realized that, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that the people are no longer trustworthy. So we can't rule the old ways in the old way. We have to rule in the new way where there's distrust of the people. So we have to have locks, we have to have secretaries, we have to have guards everywhere, so on and so forth, like that. Where is Shaykh Mahdi? So you're in communication with him? Okay, very good. Very good. Any chance you can get images of his books that we're going to talk about? Yeah. He told of the existence of Wais al-Qarni, and that there would be emirs who would delay the prayer beyond its time. He said that this affair began as prophethood and mercy, then mercy and khilafah, then strong monarchy, then arrogant tyranny and corruption. So that there are 3 phases. The era of prophethood and mercy and purity. Then strong monarchies, strong kings who cared about the country, who loved their country and respected their deen and had order. Yes, sometimes you can get a corrupt king, but even the corrupt king cares for his country, makes sure everything's clean, upright, cares for the land. Then this will pass away and you'll get jababira, absolute, just people from the streets, ruling the country for themselves, not caring at all for the sake of the country. And you see this not so long ago. So some of the old grandfathers may have childhood memories of the era of a good era in Muslim countries, where there was like monarchy, they cared about the country, right? Things like that. And you fast forward, and these generals who were selling watermelons and selling chickens have become socialists, took over the country, right? And all of a sudden now you have a dump of a land. There was a time, seriously, education, they used to tell me at least, education in Egypt is far superior to education in many other countries, right? Now you cannot imagine anything to be superior in Egypt, right? What, the pollution maybe, that's it, the negative things only. So even there was a time that the al-mulk al-adud, yes, he's a king, yes, he's selfish, yes, it's self-serving, but they're self-serving in a way that actually benefits others too, overall, right? They care for the land, they care for the country. Okay. But then you have the jababira. They're essentially bums, and they're stealing for themselves. And you're so stupid that don't you realize that you live in a country? Like, wouldn't you want the country to be clean? And I see these people, and they used to always say, oh, they steal the money for themselves and stuff like that. And they don't. But if I was a king and I was selfish, don't I still have to drive through the country, right? They just fly out and they never see the land?
They live in London and they take the money.
Okay, here's another question for you. All right, so you're the king of some third world country. You're the dictator. Don't you have people coming into your country who are looking and examining stuff and making comments, and the world is seeing your country? Don't you care about that? Wouldn't you care that people come into your country and what they say about it, and the comments they make about it, and what the ambassadors say, and when another president comes into the country, you can't put blinders. He's going to drive in the roads, right? Huh?
In India, it was done when some
What?
from US president came.
Yeah?
So the streets were blocked.
Oh my gosh. They put blinders?
Yeah. And
Unbelievable.
those are usually made when there is a politician coming to the area.
Make new roads. So That's why these are jababira. They're arrogant, tyrannical fools. They're not even competent tyrants. They're like incompetent tyrants. Their countries are terrible. Their countries are in ruins, and they're stealing people's money. Okay, I don't even think they're stealing the people's money. They're stealing the aid that they get from these Arab countries, right? From the Western countries. Okay. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said there will be 30 deceiving liars in his community. 4 of them would be women. Another hadith says 30 liars. 1 will be the Dajjal. They would all deny Allah and His Messenger. He said the time is near when there will be a lot of non-Arabs amongst you who will consume your property and strike your necks. The last hour will not come until a man from Qahtan drives the people to their destination with his staff. Okay. He also said, the best of you are my generation, then those after them, then those after them. After that, people will come who give testimony without being asked to do so, who will be treacherous and not trustworthy, who promise and do not fulfill. There will be excessive corpulence amongst them, meaning weight gain. Meaning nothing is good about you and you indulge in the dunya. Physically, you eat too much. He said, a time is only followed by one that is worse than it. Meaning every community, on the aggregate, every generation, on the aggregate will be less than the one before it and more than the one, better than the one after it. On the aggregate, which doesn't mean that you'll have a downward line like this. You have spikes. And those spikes are tajdeeds. Little tajdeeds. And there are exceptions. So you may have a community in general is going down, but a locality within that could be an exception, right? Or a whole locality is going down, but a family within that is an exception, or a whole family going down, and an individual in that who is an exception. Okay. My community, last one before we go to our interview today, he also said, my community will be destroyed at the hands of young men from Quraysh. In one version, Abu Huraira says, if I had wanted to, I could name them for you. The Beni so-and-so and the Beni so-and-so. Let's put a marker here. And use this as the bookmark. All right, our guest has arrived. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, perfect. Make the heads and the eyes the same size and everything. Let's see if we get the sound. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Shaykh Mahdi, how are you?
Walaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Dr. Shadee, كيف الحال?
How's everything?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. He's trying to stay awake.
Is this your office in Bradford, England?
Yes. My little office, yeah.
MashaAllah. Bradford is more north of Birmingham, has a nicer climate. Nicer, they have this beautiful garden in the middle of the city. And so let's tell our audience about yourself. So first of all, Shaykh Mahdi will be part of Safina Society next Arkview next year, starting in the fall. Arkview, which is going to be broken up into 4 parts. Basic, which is your fard ayn for anyone to take and learn your basic Aqidah and Fiqh and Tajweed. Arkview Basic. Then Arkview Arabic. And that's what's going to be led by Shaykh Mahdi Laki. He's going to lead the whole program, but it's going to be its own track. And then Arkview Plus, which is the scholarship track. So the Arabic will not be on the scholarship track. It'll be its own, because it needs its own attention. It needs its own leadership. Okay. The scholarship tracks will then take us to the higher level books in each madhab and in Aqidah, second level book. So what's the second level book in the Hanafi school? Omar, what's the second level book? Hanafi school. Quduri. So whatever is the second level book, we go up there. Shaykh Mahdi, you're Shafii, right?
Yes. Yes, alhamdulillah.
What would be the second level book in the Shafii school?
Well, it depends what curriculum you ask, but if you're moving up from, say, Risale al-Jamia, and then you've got Safinat al-Najah, and then you're going to get into the Minhaj al-Qawim, or the Muqaddimah al-Hadramiyya, and then you're going to move up to the Mithal Qadi Abu Shuja', and then you're going to get into, say, Umdat al-Salik.
So which one is the first one that covers mu'amalat?
That would be the Mithal Qadi Abu Shuja'.
Abu Shuja' covers mu'amalat?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know. Okay, so that's probably like our version of the Risale of Ibn Abi Zayd.
Yeah, so you start because Method Qadi Abu Shuja', I know like in the Azharis, like because one of my teachers of Azhar, like you have Method Qadi Abu Shuja', and you do that with 3 commentaries. You do that with am I loud enough, by the way?
Yeah, a little bit louder could be good. Yeah.
All right, just making sure. Yeah, so he told me that in Azhar, for example, you do the method of Qadi Abu Shuja', you do that with 3 commentaries. So Ibn al-Qasim al-Ghazi, then you do Tahdid al-Damashqi, and then you do Al-Khatib al-Shirbini, and then after that's the Minhaj al-Talibin. With 3 commentaries. So Jalal al-Mahalli, and then Al-Khatib al-Shibini again, the Mughni al-Muhtaj, and then you move on to Imam Shamsi al-Ramli.
Okay, so
his Nihaya, yeah.
Minhaj al-Talibin, would that be...
By Imam al-Nawawi.
That's the highest level.
That's highest level, yeah. That's the peak.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that Arkview Plus seeks to go into that realm.
Okay.
For the virtual classes. The second level and upwards. So we're not going to get to the third level first. We're going to do the second level in the school in fiqh and aqidah and hadith. Okay. Diraya, not riwayah.
Inshallah.
Right. It could be riwayah too. But then we have Arkview Kids, which involves teaching basic fiqh, basic seerah, and hifdh Quran. So we now have a hafidh and a muhafidh. Did you get contacted by the sister? Okay, so I gave her your number. So we're a lot of parents are like, I don't know how to get a hifz teacher online, right? We're gonna do it for you, right? And we have seerah and basic fiqh, no specific madhab, just basic tahara and salah. It's essentially in the Maliki school. Maybe we'll need Hanafi for the Hanafi families, but we generally just teach Maliki fiqh as the default. There's no such thing as no madhab, right? But we don't teach the kids that there's something called madhab because there's no need for that. The default, if you don't ask, it's Maliki. Like Azhar. If you don't ask, it's Maliki. If there comes parent demands, then we'll get a Hanafi to teach the subcontinental kids who want their kids to learn the Hanafi school. So that's Arkview Kids. All this will be rolled out in September, inshallah. That's 3. And Shaykh Mahdi is here for 2 reasons. Number 1, he is going to be our Arkview Arabic teacher, and not teacher, he's in charge of the whole program. Okay. For Arkview, and we're very excited about that. But he's also visiting us right here in New Jersey the end of this week. When do you arrive?
Thursday, inshallah. Thursday.
You arrive Thursday. I hope it's in the morning.
No, I'm going to arrive sometime in the afternoon around 3:30, I think.
So you arrive Thursday afternoon. You're going to rest all Thursday afternoon, all Friday morning, and then Friday evening, Friday afternoon you should rest. Friday evening.
Okay, mashallah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Friday evening, he will give his first lecture at MBIC on the subject matter of depression and anxiety. And that leads us to our first question for you, which is tell us about the book.
Okay.
Depression and Anxiety in Islam.
I have it in front of you, ready for the plug.
All right, keep it up for a second there. Depression and Anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah. Now we called it, as you can see from the Arabic, al-Ka'aba.
Al-Ka'aba wal...
It says asbab wa i'laj. Asbab wa i'laj, like causes and treatment. Now, so the story of this book is that it's not a translation per se. It's actually not translation of a book, I should say, because it was a TV series that Imam Muhammad al-Multi gave maybe 15, 20 years ago. It was 10 episodes. And it was 10 episodes, and it's part of a wider series called Dirasat Qur'aniyya, right? Like Quranic studies. And he covered different topics based on that, like who's the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Quran, what we understand about certain topics based on the Quran. So he set aside 10 episodes just to talk about depression, and he called it Al-Ka'aba. We decided to add anxiety to the title because he always mentions them together, or the vast majority of the time mentions them together. So he says Kaaba, and then he says qalaq, or he says al-ittirab al-nafsi, and these kinds of things. So my friend and co-author, who's also mentioned on the cover, Hazm, he's an old friend of mine. Like we went to school together, Egyptian like you. But we went to school together in Denmark. We finished the last 4 years of high school together.
Denmark.
Yeah, Denmark. Yeah,
Okay.
I finished high school in Denmark. His parents are ambassadors. They were representing Egypt at the time. So he's actually instrumental in my becoming Muslim. I mean, because he invited me to Egypt after we graduated way back in year 2000 and so forth. And we've been good friends all along. And he speaks English. He speaks English and Arabic basically like a native. Because obviously Arabic from home, from growing up in Egypt, but also just going to international schools and so forth. So he's obviously equally proficient in both languages. So he also helps me with my books as well, like all my other translations you see, especially Mama Bolti. He's proofreading and editing and checking with the Arabic and helping me out. And we came across this series. We both listened to it. We fell in love with it, and we thought this is a great thing to do. We could actually turn this into a book. I spoke to the Imam's grandson, Shaykh Rafiq's son, Dr. Mahmoud. I spoke to him about this, and he said that you can go ahead and do it. The only thing you have to make sure is that the Imam himself, like part of his wasiyah, is he did not allow for anyone to transcribe his works. So you couldn't just copy it down and then ascribe it to him and say by Imam Bolti. You couldn't do that directly. So you'd have to take the work, summarize it, change it a bit, and say. Yeah, inspired by or based on, which is what we did. We've said it's based on the TV series by, and then it's by Multi, and then translated and summarized by Mahdi and Hazm. That's the way we've done it. And that was I thought that was a good, that was like a useful license because we were able to just make the language a lot make it flow a lot smoother. And obviously because it's a TV series, like there's certain bits that you don't really need, like repetitions. Like in the last episode, we talked about this. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Took all the repetitions, and then we also were able to add sources and things. So for example, he might talk about suicide in the global statistic for suicide or depression rates, drug abuse rates, stuff like that. And then we can just look up footnotes and add them in and say this is what we're referring to. One thing that was very, very interesting that came up while we were doing the book is when Imam al-Bulti was speaking. He would draw this distinction between like Western societies and Islamic societies. That was the term he would use. He'd say like Western societies are like this and Islamic societies like this. And Hazm was the first one to flag that. He was like, well, a lot of that stuff that they have over in the West, we got it here. Because he's based in the Emirates. He's like, we got this stuff here. So we
also
said, okay.
may have been back then that distinction could have been made, but 15 years later.
Nowadays it's like, the same causes are here in these worlds. So we decided to go with, okay, we'll talk about secular materialist societies, and then we'll talk about Islamic societies. And we won't name any of them, right? We'll let the reader make up his own mind whether he thinks we're talking about America or Egypt or whatever. So that made the book flow a lot smoother. And what we decided. And I think when it got to the end of the book, we had to think about like how do we really present this? How do we really present this? Like how do we give this to people? And so after a lot of discussion and consultation with different people, we realized that it would be best. The smartest thing to do would just be to present this book. It's not as a psychology book. It's not a psychology manual or textbook. Rather, it is a book on Zuhud and Ihsan. That's really what it is, because what we're getting at is that if you are feeling depressed or anxious, you don't jump to the conclusion that you have a mental illness and that you need to seek a mental health professional. Start with the understanding that you can always improve your relationship with Allah. That's the starting point. It doesn't. I don't care who you are. Everyone has room for improvement. You're not a prophet or an angel. Everyone has room for improvement in their relationship with Allah. That's what it boils down to. So you have to look at: do you know who Allah is? Do you understand the story of your creation? Do you understand the story of where you're going? Are you in a committed relationship with your Lord? Are there things that you're neglecting? Are there things that you're slacking? And so that's where we start the book off. It's at that foundation. And that's why Imam Bolti talks about and we put this in the introduction. We said that he's looking at causes of depression that would not be really thought about or considered in the secular paradigm, right? We're not talking about chemical imbalances or simple things like, a job loss or a divorce. We have to look at the bigger picture. Like, what's really going on here? And again, this goes back to, do you know where you're from? Do you know where you're going? Do you understand why Allah created you? Do you understand why tribulations happen? Like, do you understand the nature of this world? Do you know why you go through bad times? Do you know why you go through hard times? Do you know why you grow old? Why do you grow sick? Why do you die? Do you know all these things? Like, if you don't know all these things, if you're just here in the world and you're just like, well, anything could happen and it's all haphazard, then of course it's like depression would be obvious. You see,
a lot of people talk about, when they hear the word anxiety and depression, the first solution they think of is spirituality. But I actually think that the vast bulk of those things are addressed in theology, law, and the spirituality is merely remembering the theology and giving life to the law, right? And why is all the things that you said are theological questions? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What, right? And then those are theological questions. Why do we get sick? Why does aging occur? It's almost like sort of sad to see every other famous person or Hollywood person, as they age,
plastic surgery.
They get these surgeries where, and I don't mean to offend any sisters who ever did this surgery out there, but they all look similar, right? And it's never attractive. It's almost like
just be growing old gracefully, not disgracefully.
Yeah, you see the pictures on Google of celebrity who's had like 2 or 3 of these surgeries, even one of them just Botox, which is not even a surgery, right? But you see what they look like. They didn't get any better, right? It doesn't look nice. They all look similar to each other, right? Yet people still, because of the fear and the anxiety of death and aging, forget death, aging itself, they still go get the whatever shots of Botox or whatever it's called, right? They still go get it, and you still just end up have that same, it's like Eastern European fish look, right? That's really what the look is like, because they get in the forehead. All right, now you look Eastern European, right? No offense, but do you know what I'm saying? When it has that slant, and I even my Eastern Europeans friend told me they said that there is a genetically Eastern Europeans have a type of slant in the forehead, right? And that's not something I'm making fun of anybody. I'm just saying that's a description that they
end up looking like,
yeah. And then the lips look like a fish, right? And it's almost like it's amazing how every human being's creation, it looks different. Allah's creation of every human being looks different. Yet as soon as human beings get involved in altering the creation, it'll look the same, right? And they're unidentifiable. Everyone looks the same. So, and again, it's not to make fun of someone Muslim who may have gotten this or anything, but I'm just saying, firstly, it's unlawful for us to do this, but at the same time, it's unappealing at the same time. But why do people get driven to do this? It's because the questions that you just answered or you just asked. Why does aging happen, right? What do we get? What's going to happen to us after we die? Theological questions. Fiqh, Sharia also is a preventative measure against a lot of anxiety and depression. If you think about why some of the secondary causes, I would say theology is the primary stuff. Why do I exist? Where am I going? What's the purpose of life? The secondary thing is theology, is fiqh. Anxiety is caused by intoxication, I should say. Men-women problems, right? Problems that people have, men and women. What else? Debts, financial problems.
Yeah, financial issues, health issues.
Right? Health issues. So these, I would say, are the secondary causes. But fiqh is a preventative measure from all these things. Like a lot of young guys who are depressed. Oh, I'm depressed. Oh, my girlfriend left me. Well, a girl is depressed. So-and-so, they have fallout over a boy, right? Sharia prevents these things. And then when you get married, it gives you a track how to get married. When you are married, it gives you a track, what's your job, what's her job, right? Then the tertiary things is, I would say, the anxiety and depression that practicing Muslims get. And that is like, they don't have the major issues, but they're just sort of down, right? And sometimes you just need a jolt to tasawwuf, right? You just need to increase your dhikr and sometimes even learn what dhikr is. So I would say tasawwuf is like the tertiary solution, right? Oftentimes. And whenever people say, I went to the guru and it helped me, or I went to some hippies become Sufis and it helped me out. Well, the way he helped you out is probably an aqidah point, not just dhikr. Because dhikr without these questions being answered doesn't solve any problems. Dhikr, when you still don't really believe in God or know where you're going in life or what's the purpose of life, it doesn't help anything. So
Yes, hollow.
yeah.
No,
So
but I think what.
Yeah.
No, because I think is what you're getting at again. I think with the tasawwuf, because he does talk about that in the book. Because like you said, one of the causes of depression, and he said that he's seen this in his own life, is that you'd have someone who could spend their whole life sinful, or I could be have a sinful. Oh, I was reading my hand. There's a hand symbol. I'm not putting my hand up. But there could someone can live their whole life in sin.
That's the AI thingy, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
Like live their whole life in sin and then repent and rectify their lives and start being committed believers and praying on time and leaving awful sins and all the major sins and so on and so forth. But then Shaitan whispers to them, you see. And Shaitan says, your past is so horrible. How could Allah forgive you? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You really think that you can change? You really think that Allah is going to take you back after everything you've done? And so then you have to go back to the Quran. That's why it's the Quran. It's the cause of human according to the Quran, because you have to look at Allah saying, Ya ibadi alladhina asrafu in Surah Al-Zumar, Ya ibadi alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim, la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Like, do not despair, my slaves who despair themselves, do not despair from the rahmah of Allah. Right? And Allah yaghfir dhunuba jami'a. Like, Allah forgives all sins. So these are like really key messages to get to people, that you cannot, you never ever despair the mercy of Allah, and you have to tell people like this that Allah loves you, and if Allah didn't love you, He wouldn't have called you back. Like, if Allah didn't love you, He wouldn't have put it in your heart to say, I need to change.
Yeah.
I need to leave these sins off. So that's for the person who's rectifying himself. I think another cause, and this is something I've noticed looking in what I call the Anglosphere, these English-speaking countries, US, UK. I think a lot of people, and this is something that Sunni Muslims should be doing. We should be stressing very, very hard on faith-based salvation. That's what we need to be talking about, because a lot of people are falling into believing in deeds-based salvation, where people actually believe that they have to be the 51% good Muslim.
Yeah.
To go to paradise, like to be saved, I have to be that 51% good Muslim. I have to make sure that my good deeds outweigh my bad deeds. Like, no. It's by Allah's mercy that you're going to paradise. Yeah. By Allah's mercy that you found that destination. That's why Imam Tahawi says in his Bayan al-Sunnah, he says that the people at Ahl al-Kabad, Mahdi al-Ummah, they're in the fire, but not Khalideen. Right? Yeah. That's Ahl al-Kabad. Yeah. Right. So no one from this ummah is in the fire forever. Right. We're saved by Allah's mercy. We're saved by Allah's mercy. Yes, the deeds may be mitigating factors in terms of temporary punishment and so forth, but your final destination is to Allah, or is to the paradise. So that can be another thing that really bogs down on people, where they think like, oh, I'm trying so hard, but I might not make it, and that's a horrible way to see Allah. That's a really horrible way to see it. It's like Allah's like a mafia don or something. Like, I'll do my best, but He might still whoop me. That's not how you should see Allah at all.
Or it's an accounting. It's stuck on the numbers of deeds, whereas we see that the stories of the man who killed 99 was forgiven on the attempt to make hijrah. Right. And also just is in the same way it takes a lot of iman to avoid sins and fear punishment. It also takes a lot of iman as well for the positive things. Many people don't believe in the positive things. That's a result of weakness of iman. Belief that all sins could be erased, all minor sins for a year could be erased by fasting one day. Ashura. All sins for 1 year back and 1 year forward can be erased by fasting Yom Arafah. That's it. 12-hour fast. You're going to, maybe it could be at some time in the winter, that could be a 10-hour fast in which you sleep 5 hours of it, right? So for 5 hours of wakeful fasting, so you have trouble believing that, you need to increase your iman, because it's only that way because Allah chose it to be that way. That's it. We today highlight a whole bunch of files and hit the delete button. You can have files with encyclopedias and books that if they were printed out would fill a whole room. Yet we have all that here, and by highlighting them all and hit delete, immediately they're deleted, right? They're gone. A brother asked me, so he said, hold on, Yom Arafah forgives the past year and the future year of sins, minor sins. And they could be major sins if you accompany the fasting with tawbah, right? Specific for that deed. He says, then you're telling us that Ashura erases the previous year's deeds. So, but we already erased it with Arafah. And then Jummah to Jummah erases that. So every time I attend Jummah, so why all these repetitions of forgiveness? So I said, look, forgiveness, it's almost like you have a very dirty, let's say, table, and you go over it once with a towel, is not the same as going over it 5 times with a towel, right? Or a wall that is black, you give it one coat of white, it's still not gonna, there's still gonna be some blackness. Another coat and another coat. So I said that these are, the forgiveness is maghfirah. The first level, it forgives the sin. Like the sinful intent, Allah forgives it. The second one is kaffara an sayyatihim, is that he covers your sins over so you don't get embarrassed. Not only he forgave it, but he covers it so you don't get embarrassed. Okay, so that's maghfirah. And then there is takfir al-dhunub. And then there is afu al-dhunub, which is I will protect you from the hardship resulting from this sin. Okay, so like what? Like getting like the results of the sins. So I may have sins that nobody knows about, but I suffer the results of it. Like what? Many people who have sexual deviation, we may never see that sin, but he still feels the results. Depression and misery and self-hate, right? He hates himself and he loathes himself. And he feels miserable about this, and he distrusts everybody, and things like that, because he's got secrets in the closet. So it's one thing that Allah forgives. It's another thing that he covers up your sins. And it's yet a third thing that he protects you from the after effects of those sins. And then the last level of afu is to complete, because afu has 2 types. One is protection, but the other is a complete erasing of that sin, such that you come on the day of judgment and you don't even see it in your book. And there are a hadith of people searching for the sin that they committed in their book and their scrolls and not finding it.
And also the ayah says that Allah will turn some bad deeds into good deeds even.
So that's the next level of it, right? Turning the bad deed into a good deed. So you see how there's constant, there's tabdil. So there's maghfirah, there's kafarat sayyat, there's afu, which has 2 levels to it, and there's tabdil, sayyat il hasanat. And that's why you have these situations where it's the same period of time, but I'm seeking forgiveness for it over and over and over. You'll be elevating that dark wall or dark heart or dark spot into slowly, not a lighter spot, into slowly a shining spot. And that's the understanding of wiping away those deeds. That takes a lot of iman to believe that small deeds can result in that, right?
Allah's latif. Allah's latif. And even things like you were mentioning fasting, but even just being kind to your mother. I was with someone last night. We were talking about the hadith al-Adab al-Mufrad, where the man murdered a woman they wanted to marry. She turned him down, and she went to Ibn Abbas. And Ibn Abbas said, "Do you have a mother?" He said, "No." Well, then just make tawbah. But the narrator of the hadith says, "Why did you ask him if his mother was alive?"
Yeah.
And he said because that's the quickest way. Obedience to the mother, good to the mother. That's the best way to draw near to Allah.
Subhanallah.
It's an al-Adab al-Mufrad. I mean, there's so many doors and passageways out there. There's so many means at your disposal to draw nearer to Allah that will take you out of these states, even if you are so wallowed in sin, if you have so many sins. And shaitan plays on that, and shaitan's going to play on that. But so you have to go back to the ayat, you have to go back to the Quran, you have to go back to the Sunnah, and remind yourself of these ayat, and have a good opinion of Allah, because Allah does say in the Hadith Qudsi, and in the Abdi bi, right? I am as my slave sees me. So you have to see Allah as merciful. You have to see Allah as having compassion towards you. And that is especially the case, as our ulama have taught us, that's especially the case when you're approaching death. That's especially the case, like when you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Like on your deathbed, you should have nothing but a good opinion of Allah. And whatever pain. Imam As-Suyuti talks about this in Sharh Sador. I'm sure we discussed that before. Like Imam As-Suyuti talks about how the unbeliever can have an easy death because he's being rewarded for whatever good he did. And that's the end of it, right? He dies, and that's the end of it. And then it's the opposite. Whereas for the believer, he'll have a hard death because Allah is purifying him. Right? Whatever sickness he's going through, Allah is purifying him, and then he goes back to Allah.
So people should not make judgments. People should not make judgments on the good death of a rejecter of faith, because that may be his reward.
Yeah, it's his reward. Yeah, that's it.
Subhanallah.
Allah's just. Allah's just. Yeah. That's not an indication of truth or anything. And we know that anyway.
Yeah.
we don't go by any of these, even things like karamat or whatever you want to call it. There's not. That's not a proof of truth or truth or falsehood.
Yeah, it's not an arbiter. It's not an arbiter of Aqidah.
Yeah.
Let's now turn, before we get to the next book, you mentioned that you finished high school in Denmark. What's your trajectory in life from childhood until Bradford, England? How many different cities did you live in? At least in your youth, because that's your...
I thought we tested this before, did we not? Okay, no.
So how many languages do you speak right now?
Arabic and English are the better ones, and then I have some French and some Danish. But I'm forgetting them, alhamdulillah.
Well, we don't have to go into it now if you don't want to, but you did spend time in continental Europe.
Yeah, so I don't mind telling you again. It's okay. So I was born in Sweden because my dad was working there at the time. He was an English professor. So I was born in Sweden, but I was only there for 8 months. Then we moved to Canada because my mom is a Canadian citizen. Her parents are Russian. Okay, that's where he gets the confusion. He'll get confused with these kinds of things. So I lived in the Toronto area for about 14 years. Yeah, 14 years. That would be like June 81 to June 96, right? And that's where you and I had that conversation about ice hockey, because that's...
Yeah.
All right? Yeah. We remember those days, right?
Yep.
My parents got divorced along the way. Then I moved to live with my dad in Denmark for 4 years. Right? So that's where I finished high school. I actually did like English O-levels and GCSEs, then I did International Baccalaureate. And that's where Hazm and I met. And that's where I was learning about Islam from Hazm during that time, you see. I became Muslim in 2000. Hazm took me to Egypt before that, just to meet family and ask questions and stuff like that and see Egypt. It's very, very beneficial, mashallah. Then I started my degree at Leeds. I went to Leeds, England. Right? Which did you see Leeds when you were here?
I didn't come to Leeds, no. I didn't go to Leeds.
Leeds is like down the road from Bradford. It's like 10 miles away. Right? It's like a neighboring city. So in Leeds, I was originally signed up for an Arabic degree. I was not a history degree. It was actually a history degree I was signed up for. I was on a history degree. And then in my first year, I found out, my first week base when I arrived, I found out, I don't know what they call them in the U.S. Do you have these things called electives in the U.S.?
Yeah, we have that. Yeah.
You know, like courses that you do alongside your degree.
Yeah.
So, being the super rational fellow that I am, I thought, well, I may as well do an elective in Arabic. So because they had this big fair, this big hall full of different courses being advertised. I thought, all right, I may as well learn some Arabic. So I signed up to do these Arabic electives, and then met the Muslims on the course, and they said to me, you could make Arabic joint honors. You could do Arabic and history together. Do you have the expression about joint honors? Yeah. So make it together, put them together as one degree. And then you get to do a year abroad. There's a year abroad program, right, in your second year. So it's a 4-year program. Your second year is abroad. You could go to Morocco. You could go to Kuwait or Egypt or something like that. So I thought, that's pretty cool. So I filled out the paperwork, changed over, made Arabic my co-major, you could say. And then I went to Morocco. So I went to Morocco for 2001, 2002. That's where I really dived into Arabic. Like I took it really seriously. And then from then, because in that year I covered a lot of just all the basics. I did a commentary to Drumiyah with a teacher. I did another book in grammar and stuff. I covered a lot of stuff. And then when I got back to Leeds, for the final 2 years, there wasn't really much for them to teach me. Because I've done a lot on the side, stuff like that. So I did some media Arabic courses, stuff like that. I started translating khutbahs of local masjids. Graduated in 2004 with my degree in Arabic history. I also did a TEFL qualification during that time. I did a TEFL qualification in 2003. Then I ended up in the city of Nottingham for 4 years. I was teaching kids. I was at a school. Yeah, it was like local Muslim schools. I was teaching secondary humanities. I was teaching like history, geography, these kinds of things. I did do some GCSE Islamic studies, and I taught Arabic to the kids at the primary school. Then I got a job with, there's a university, there's a couple of universities in Nottingham. So there's a small one called Nottingham Trent University. I applied to be their Arabic coordinator. They took me on, so I was their Arabic coordinator for 2 years. I designed a course and taught them for a couple of years. It was actually a part-time job, but there's a lot of demand for it. I was only gonna do like a couple of evenings a week, and it ended up being like 2 or 3. So it was quite good. It was quite good. That was quite good. And then, because of the economic downturn at that time, 2008, I left and I went back to Morocco. I took my wife, went back to Morocco, and then that was more studying, teaching English. That's where I was translating Imam As-Suyuti Tafsir, things like that. And then 2011, I started translating more books. I got involved in studying a lot of books for people in Malaysia. I started doing some books, Fiqh of Waqf, Kitab al-Halal Haram by Imam Ghazali, Imam An-Nawawi's Introduction to the Majmu'ah, called The Etiquettes of the Scholar and the Learner, the Mufti, the Mustafti and the Mufti. And then I moved to Jeddah in 2012 and I was in Jeddah from 2012 to 2020.
Corona.
All the time.
And that's where we met at that Umrah. When I was at Umrah and you were there. And that was literally like the last Umrah batch that came out of America before Corona. So the winter break of 2019, right? And then 2020. And then right then there was the Corona 3 months after that shut everything down. So, mashallah, that is a impressive passport size there, right? With all that travel, mashallah. But that's how some questioners here online are saying that's how much you have to travel for ilm. Yeah, the people travel a lot for knowledge, and especially before a time where there was access to Zoom or a lot of stuff in the English language, you did have to travel a lot. Today, people on their iPads may have books that we couldn't even, imagine, we didn't even know existed, right, in the libraries and the bookstores of Eastern countries. But now things may be a lot easier. Nonetheless, traveling for knowledge is always a great thing. It shows effort, and it puts you in the company of shuyukh as opposed to merely just listening to their lectures or reading their books. Now, before we get to the next segment, can I put you on the spot? You're going to take over for me and begin the discussion on your next book, which is Marriage, which is your master's thesis. So that's what you're gonna. Where we'll talk about that next. I'm gonna put our Sadiqeen rep here. Inshallah, Salman is gonna take over for a second. I'm gonna go downstairs real quick, come back up. But the subject is the Ayaat of Al-Ahkam about marriage, and that's gonna be our intensive here at MBIC on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. A big intensive on the marriage verses in the Quran. All right, so why don't you come up, he said, man, I'll take a break and come back.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Shaykh. Yeah, so you have a new book about marriage.
It's not a book. It's not a book. I might put out as a book at some point in the future, but it's my MA thesis basically. It's my MA thesis. There's a sort of like a short summarized version available online, published in a journal. But my MA thesis basically, what it's about about translating the ayat of the Ahkam al-Nikah into English. So they're about 17. There's 17 in number, these ayat, what I was looking at, because I was in the Arabic department, my master's degree is in Arabic, it's Arabic linguistics. So I'm coming from the Arabic standpoint, but I'm looking at the Arabic language, English language, fiqh and tafsir and usul, and putting it all together into one presentation. So what I did with this thesis was I wanted to know, I was trying to get at, because no one had ever done this before. This is what I was told by my professors over there. No one had ever asked, why do you get different translations, right? Because there's so many translations of the Quran out there by different people, whether it's Yusuf Ali or Mahmoud al-Piqthal or Abdul Halim Yusuf Ali or whatever. There's all these different translations. Why do they exist? And so I thought looking at the Ayat Ahkam and Nikah would be very, very interesting, because what I've studied in my time studying fiqh and studying the Quran, all these kinds of things, is the understanding that a translator, there's no such thing as a translator of the Quran. A translator is really a mufassir. He's a mufassir because he's telling you what the Quran means, right? You can't translate an ayah of the Quran and say this is what it is in English, right? You can say in English the ayah means this, or the ayah is saying this, but there's so many, as people like Abdul Halim al-Zarqani, the big, he's one of the first people actually. He wrote a big book on Ulum al-Quran called Manahil al-Irfan fi Ulum al-Quran. He died in 1948, rahimahullah. He's one of the first people to really go into the issue of translation, these we call translation of the Quran. And he said that he showed that when people do this, you might be able to convey what's called a primary meaning, but you can't convey the secondary meaning. There's all these balagha meanings that get lost. That are important, but they get lost because you can't convey them because only Arabic can speak them, right? So that's why he said, for example, you understand that Arabic. He said the Quran is a king and he sits on the throne of Arabic. If you take him off his throne, what's he sitting on? This is what Allah chose to convey His revelation. This is the language that He chose. You're going to lose stuff. I was talking to some of your colleagues on a Zoom meeting not that long ago, and I explained this sort of thing. I said, for example, you can't translate. Just to give you an example, you cannot translate something as simple as Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah gets lost in translation. Why? Especially in English. Because in English, we always, every single sentence in English, I don't know if you guys remember your grammar stuff in school, but it would have told you that every single sentence in English has a verb, right? You have to have a verb. Even if it's not, if you don't have an action word like jumping or playing or working, whatever, you're going to have the verb to be, right? He is hungry, right? We are tired, whatever. You're going to have the verb to be. And the word verb itself in English comes from the Latin word verbatim. Which means the word, right? That's why we say expression like it's I don't know, it's not the word verbatim, but when we use expression verbatim, we mean word by word, don't we? Yeah. Right? Because it means word, right? So what the English grammarians mean by that is they mean that if you don't have a verb, you don't have a sentence. Like the verb is the word. If you don't have a verb, you don't have a sentence. You don't have meaning, right? Arabic transcends that. Arabic transcends that because Arabic, you can have verbal sentences and nominal sentences. You can have a sentence that starts with a verb, a sentence that starts with a noun. Arabs can say something. In Arabic, you can say something without using a verb. If you're not using a verb, you're not confined to time, right? So if you say, Alhamdulillah, we put that into English, we think, oh, all praise be to Allah, all praise belongs to Allah, all praise due to Allah. But you're putting in verbs. Every time you put it in English, you're putting in a verb. Whereas Allah says, Alhamdulillah, all praise for Allah. It's a timeless expression. Because that's who Allah is. He's outside time. He's the creator of time. Right? It's like what Imam Tahawi says in Bayan al-Sunnah. He says that Allah is the Khaliq before there's a Makhluk. Allah is the Rabb before there's a Marbub. He's the creator before there's anything created. He's the Rabb before there's anything to be the Lord over. So these things get lost. These things get lost. So once you understand that point about how you can't translate the Quran, you're stuck in that way, and therefore when you quote unquote translating, what you have to do is explain the meaning. So you're essentially a mufassir. So when you're translating, you're not really a translator. You're essentially a mufassir. Okay, now if you're going to be a mufassir of the Quran, you're actually going to write a book, or you're going to teach people. You're going to say to people, this is what the Quran means. This is what Allah is saying to you. there are conditions that have to be fulfilled. So this is where I bring in my thesis. I brought in, I quote Imam As-Suyuti, Imam As-Suyuti, in his book Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, because he lists 15 sciences that you have to know. Like if you're going to be a professor, you have to know 15 sciences.
SubhanAllah.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Coffee. And he mentions like I think 7 or 8 of them are language based. So you have to know lugha, you have to know nahu, you have to know sarf, you have to know the branches of balagha, you have to know qira'at, you have to know fiqh, you have to know usul, you have to know naskh wa mansukh, you have and then the last one he mentions is ilm al-mawhiba. This is a gift from Allah. Right? So like translating the Quran is not like a pastime or a hobby. This is like serious work that you have to be thinking about, because you are a mufassir. So what I then go into is showing, okay, now if we want to talk about why we have all these quote unquote translations in English and there are discrepancies between them and then are even mistakes in between them, what we find then is that why this is happening is that these people are not qualified. The people who are doing it, they don't have those 15 sciences. For example, they don't understand. They don't understand, for example, that a fail amr, like when you see a fail amr in the Quran, it doesn't always indicate wujub. Right? It can be a threat. It can be a tahdeed. It can be like like we say that in English all the time. We say to someone, yeah, do that and find out. That's not a command. That's a threat.
Yep.
It's not wujub. Right? So people, there's people who read ayat in the Quran, where Allah will say, I can't think of a particular ayah right now, but Allah will say like, was it like siru fil ard, right? Go in the earth, you'll see what happened to people before you. Siru fil ard is not a command. It's not wujub. It's not even it's Allah just telling you, if you go out in the earth, this is what you will see.
Yeah.
Right? But people understand that as somehow being an obligation. Right? So what I'm showing, and so why these 15 ayat al-ahkam are so crucial, why I chose them. This is what we're going to cover on Saturdays. I show, like, obviously, because marriage is the building block of society, it's the building block of the community. It's so important that we get this right, because if we don't, people are in invalid marriages, people are getting divorced for the wrong reasons. It's a mess, right? If you screw up marriage, you screw up everything, basically, right? It's the foundation of your entire community, right? If that's not sound, everything just collapses. So I then I kind of like raising the alarm here, where I'm saying, okay, now, if these ayat are being translated into English and they're being mistranslated, and people in English communities are relying on that to build up ahkam, whatever they're doing in their communities, Houston, we have a problem. Sorry, New Jersey, we have a problem. Right? So it's like like we have to address this. So that's what I did is I chose to make it more relevant. This is like the summer of 2020. So I went on Amazon US, the Amazon West, and I looked at, okay, what are the most common translations, what are the most popular best-selling translations. So it ended up being, it was Yusuf Adi, Abdul Halim, and a new one I hadn't heard of called Clear Quran by someone called Talal Aitani. I think he's based in Texas. And then the professors over there in Jeddah, they suggest me, could you also put in Taqiyuddin Hilali, like that one, because that's the one they put out in Medina. They publish in Medina, and that's like that is Arabic English side by side. And they said, like we tend to rely on that, so could you research that one as well? Could you just add that to the list? So great. So I put them all together, and I looked at the linguistic differences, looked at the grammar differences, looked at the balagha differences. And so that's why I laid it out. I said, like, this is what Allah says. Like, give you the ayah, then I break down, then I show you, okay, this is how so-and-so translates, this is how so-and-so translates, and look at the differences. And you get really, you get some really scary mistakes.
SubhanAllah. Example.
Okay. Well, I'll give you an example. You can imagine what would happen if a translator does not know what the word consummate means. Doesn't really know what it means. So I remember, I think the ayah was, let me whip it out here. There was an ayah, it was a Surah Al-Baqarah, I think it was ayah 135. Was it 235? There's the ayah, it was the ayah about, was the ayah about proposing to a woman who's in iddat al-wafa, right? Like she's in iddah because her husband has died, right? Now, and Allah says that there's nothing wrong if you do ta'reed, right? لا جناح عليكم فيما عرضتم به, right? This is ayah 235 in Baqarah, right? So all the mufassirun will tell you, right? And that's why they go to like normal tafsir, just standard tafsir, or you go to like tafsir ayat al-ahkam. They'll tell you that ta'reed means to announce it. Sorry. Ta'reed is to hint. Ta'reed is to hint at that you want marriage, right? So like, for example, Ibn Kathir will give examples. It's like you might say this lady like Anti Jamila, right? You might drop a clip like you're beautiful, or you might say any man would be happy to have you. That's a hint, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's not a formal proposal. As long as it's not a formal proposal, you're okay. You're allowed to hint, okay? One of the translators understood ta'reed to be the same as ard, and said there's nothing wrong with you declaring it. There's nothing wrong with you declaring it. There's nothing wrong with you announcing it. It's like, right? And then you go through the ayah. You go through the ayah, right? Right? And then Allah says at the end, right? Allah says, وَلَا تَعْزِمُوا عُقْدَةَ النِّكَاحِ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْكِتَابُ أَجَلَهُ, right? So exactly. So don't. So like something, it's like as well as a resolve. Like I argue that the best way to translate would probably be something like this is an Americanism. Don't even think about it, right? Don't even
وَلَا
think
تَعْزِمُوا.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even, because Azm is the resolve. So it's like, so don't even think about it. Don't have the resolve to marry her until the iddah is ended. Until the iddah is ended. That's what it means. That's what it means, right? So now you go from the beginning. So let's recap it. You go from the beginning of the ayah where Allah is telling you the most you can do is drop a hint. If you want to marry this lady, she's into wafat. The most you can do is drop a hint. End of the ayah, Allah is saying, don't even think about marrying her until the iddah is ended. One of the translators translated la ta'zimu as do not consummate the marriage.
Wow.
Until the kitab is like, well, wait a second.
That's a disaster. That's a disaster.
How do we go from you can't even drop a hint to
don't consummate.
That's unbelievable. One of them translated al-kitab literally as the book. Which is the iddah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
so how does that transition even work? Do not intend marriage until the book reaches its end? Like, how does it even work?
Yeah, you see, but again, this is where people are thinking they can translate this stuff just by using their Arabic, their language. Okay, you might know what the word means, but you're not looking at the tafsir. I can't. I think a more egregious example. I think something. Okay, more egregious than that. I would say, in a way, came where, and this I did this in the last part of my thesis. I covered this thing. Whereas, we have something, and this exists in every legal system. We call it, you know what I mean by it? We call it like mafhum mukhalafa, right?
Yeah.
Mafhum mukhalafa.
Understanding from the opposite.
Yeah, understanding the opposite, exactly, right? And they had this in American law as well. Actually, we was reading it in the book Reading Law by Justice Scalia and Brian A. Gardner. They have a whole chapter on this. It's called negative implication. Yeah. Right? Negative implication. And I watched an interview with Justice Scalia and Peter Robinson. As Justice Scalia, what he explains in there is he says the negative implication is there, but it's not always there. Right? You can't make those statements assume it's always there. So for example, if we go to a restaurant and the sign says under fives eat free, you understand what?
Over 5 pays.
Okay.
5 or over
right.
pays. Yep.
Right. But if the sign in the restaurant says no dogs or cats allowed, what do you understand from that?
That's it. Also, no animals.
Yeah, no animals, no pets.
No
right?
animals.
You would think, okay, I'll go home and get my giraffe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he said sometimes there is a mafhum mukhalafa, but sometimes it's just mentioning what the majority is.
That's true. Yeah.
There is no mafhum mukhalafa. You can't make that mistake. You don't say, okay, well, no dogs or cats, great. I'll get my elephant and my cougar.
Yeah. Subhanallah, they say the same thing in usul. Ala al-ghalib. Madhkur ala al-ghalib.
Al-ghalib, yeah. Or makhraj al-ghalib. Exactly. So what I discovered doing in my translations was that when I got to there's two ayat where this is really, really serious, and Imam Kathir even points this out. He says, like, this is where you understand, like, he said in this ayah and this, it's Surah An-Nisa 23, and it's in Surah Nur, I think ayah 33, I think it is, where he says he says la mafhuma la in this ayah.
لا مفهوم مخالف.
Yeah, exactly. Mafhum mukhalafa, right? Now, again, if you don't understand the usuli terminology, you might read and think, okay, there's no understanding here, there's no concept here. No. What he means is, if you understand the usuli terminology or the dalala terminology, you know that means there's no mafhum mukhalafa.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying, right? So in Surah Nisa ayah 23, I want to make sure I get this right. He says, where Allah says that. This is like hurimat alaykum ummahatukum, right? All the people that you cannot marry, right? Now the key thing is when Allah says وَرَبَائِبُكُمُ اللَّاتِي فِي حُجُورِكُم.
Yes,
right?
that's exactly it. Yep.
Right? Your stepdaughters who are under your care, right? Now, how do you translate that?
Yeah.
Because Allah says رَبَائِبُكُم اللَّاتِي, right? So the allati fi hujurikum, that part, that's not mukhalafa. Right? It doesn't mean that if your stepdaughter's not living with you,
That's the exact example they give in the usul books. That specific ayah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that one. Yeah. So you cannot assume that your stepdaughter, she's not living with you, then you're allowed to marry. No, your stepdaughter's not allowed to live with you, and the fact that she's allowed to be that's just the ghalib.
Yeah.
In most cases, that's me. So, and again, I look every translation I've seen in this ayah, not just in my MA thesis, every translation I've seen gets this wrong.
Wow.
Right, where it's given as if it's your stepdaughter's under your care, it's your stepdaughter's under your guardianship, it's your stepdaughter's in your house, and it's like, no, you have to, now you need to know English grammar now, because English grammar, we have something called defining and non-defining relative clauses, right? How you break it down, whether you're talking about everyone, you're talking about just a group. So, for example, right, I'm gonna bore you guys, I'm gonna teach you English grammar now, but let's get into this. So. If I say, for example, my students, comma, who love grammar, comma, will pass the exam, that's not the same as my students who love grammar will pass the exam with no commas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My students, comma, who love grammar, comma, will pass the exam. It's called a non-defining relative clause or a non-restrictive relative clause. It means all of them.
Yeah.
The fact that they love grammar is simply extra information. It's parenthetical. It's not crucial. Whereas if I say my students who love grammar will pass the exam, I'm defining it.
Yeah.
I'm saying only my students who love grammar will pass the exam. Right? So the way to translate an ayah like this, would be to say your stepdaughters, comma, who tend to be under your care.
Yes.
Comma, and carry on. That's the best way to say it. Right? Just to say the point, like they might be in your care, in most cases they are in your care, but that's not defining them. You're not defining them. It's just stepdaughters.
It's just a description, a common description. And when people ask, well, then why would Allah put it there if it's not restrictive? And the answer to that is that one of the answers to that is that it's actually telling you that it's permissible for the stepdaughter to live with the men. So it's giving you two pieces of information in one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the other ayah, just remember, the other ayah was in Surah An-Nur, where Allah says, وَلَا تُقْلِهُ فَتَيَاتُمْ عَلَى بِغَاء.
Yeah.
In أَرَدْنَا تَحَصُّنًا. Right? It's like, so don't force your slave girls in now the way I would translate it is I would say do not force your slave girls into prostitution, comma, who might want to remain pure. Right? But the way everyone translates, I think that's ayah 33. It's ayah 33 in Surah An-Nur. Yeah, تُقْرِهُ فَتَيَاتِكُمْ عَلَى الْبِغَاءِ إِنْ أَرَدْنَا تَحَصُّنًا. Right? Now everyone translates the in there as if it's conditional.
Yeah.
Don't force your slave girls into prostitution if they want to remain chaste.
So if they don't want to be chaste, then you can't. that would be the misunderstanding.
That's not even logical.
Insane.
Like so Fakhruddin Ar-Razi says in his tafsir, he makes it very clear. He says that's not ma'qul. There's no meaning to the force. You can't say, for example, if a man's hungry, don't force him to eat.
Yeah.
It's like, he's hungry. How are you going to force him? There's no logic to it. But everyone translates it that way. All the tafsirs looked at, everyone translates that. Not just these ones in my study. All the ones I looked at, they all put it that way. They always say, do not force your slave girls into prostitution if they want to remain pure. But Well, the Mufassirun say you can't force anyone to prostitution. That's not
Yeah.
allowed. It's
Yeah.
haram. Don't force anyone to prostitution. The fact that they may want to remain pure, that's separate information,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, but these are mistakes that arise when people don't know. They know the grammar, they don't know the tafsir, they don't know the usul, they don't, and then these mistakes arise, and you're just not looking at tafsir literature.
So let me ask you
Like
this. Sorry, you continue before I ask you my next question.
No, and I just want to finish that point that
Sure.
like this that ayah in Surah Nur 33 that's the one that really kind of struck out to me, where I thought, like, how come, like, you like read that back to yourself.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
make sense. Don't force someone to prostitution if they want to remain pure. So, but if a woman, as Fakhr Razi says, Imam Fakhr Razi says, if a woman doesn't want to remain pure, like she wants to be a whore, how do you force her
Yeah.
to be one? It doesn't. There's no meaning to it.
Yeah. When you, at the time of your study, had Shaykh Nuhs Quran Behelds come out yet?
No. But
Have
I
you had a
looked
chance to look at it?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you find anything from what you talked about, needing to be adjusted or curious, question marks in it?
I'll answer in the affirmative.
Ajib, ajib. Now, do you think that some scholars translate the Quran word for word exactly as it is, and then basically with the philosophy or the argument that, well, if you want to know any more, you need the tafsir. So they're not going to put a tafsir in the translation.
We don't know what their intentions are. I mean, I haven't read the introduction to that translation in particular, but I'm saying you can't. I don't see how you can really do that. I just want to put out a blatant translation, because again, you're still in the mode of telling people what the Quran means.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And these mistakes are going to arise. And again, we have to go back to those 15 sciences that you have to know.
Yeah.
And I think also what I'd like to do is draw a comparison. I also put this in my thesis, because I think this is quite galling. I was quite shocked when I read this. Have you read the history of the King James Bible?
No.
How that came about?
No, not really.
Okay, so the King James Bible, this was compiled. So this was the English. This is the official English translation commissioned by King James. He's not the guy who translated it. So you're translating from Greek and Hebrew into English. Now, this was a long project. This took from, like, I think it was like from 1704 to 1711. That's the right century, yeah. And he had 50 people do it.
Wow. Different chapters.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'll explain what he did. So like, one rewise is 48, one rewise is 52. But so what he did is he brought together the top scholars of England. He brought together the professors of Hebrew, the professors of Greek, the professors of theology from Oxford, from Cambridge, from different parts of the country. He brought together the best people that he could find, broke them up into like 7 panels, and said, okay, you guys are in charge of these chapters of the Bible as a panel. You guys are in charge of this part of the Old Testament, and you guys are in charge of New Testament. So it was like 7 panels all split up. All right, and they're a combination of like theologians, linguists, legal people all together, and they produced a translation, and then they had a review process, right, where they would actually like they swap the panels around, they check each other's work, and then they'd have like one conference at the end where they go over verse by verse. Okay, do we all agree that this is the best way to render this verse in English? Yes. Next. That's how meticulous they were.
Wow.
These aren't believers.
Yeah.
These are people with a corrupted book. All right, but this is how serious they took it.
Wow.
This is the effort they put into. Like, this is and this is why, like, the King James Bible. I don't know what the effect is like in America, but in England, people are so proud of that thing, and I think they have a right to be, because when an English person talks the King James Bible, he almost becomes like effusive, and so many like common phrases in the English language come to the King James Bible. Like, I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, the powers that be, all these expressions, all these like really classical expressions, they all come to the King James Bible. That's the influence it has. Like people see, it's like it's either on par or above Shakespeare.
Wow.
Right? That's the King James Bible. But why though? Because the effort that was put into it. And even if you look at things like the New Standard Version in the United States, even that was done by a panel of people. right? Even that was on my panel. Like people came together, different backgrounds, different disciplines, and brought them together, right? So, I think that my conclusion, what I found was quite shocking, was like how come they're putting that much effort into their translations of the Bible, and we're over here thinking that just one guy can do it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
Right?
good. That's
like
a huge. That's an amazing point. I mean, I never knew that the King James Bible they took that much effort to put the translation into it. Or in the translation. I never thought about that. I never knew that, and it is a heavy responsibility for somebody to translate, the word of Allah, and you need all these the sciences to understand it, and then there's philosophical questions like, are we just translating it, or are we putting our tafsir in it?
We're always putting our tafsir in it, because this is the conclusion. This is why I highly recommend the book if you can get it. I mean, I can grab off my shelf right now. Hold on. This is the book I highly recommend for Dr. Shadee. Can you read that? Is that not mirrored, right? Manahil Irfan fi Ulum al-Quran.
Yes. This Suyuti.
No, this is Abdul Halim al-Zarqani. Abdul Halim al-Zarqani. He passed.
So that's the original. That's the original source. Manahil. Al-Manahil.
Yeah. So he's the first alim to really look into this issue of translation, right? And like, what do we mean to translate the Quran? So what you find is that later ulama, when they talk about it, they fall back on him. So like Imam Abulti in his book on the Quran, he falls back on him. Imam As-Suyuti and Mahdi Mistu in the book Al-Wadi, they fall back on him. Shaykh Muhammad Sabuni, his book of Tibyan, he falls back on him. They all fall back on this individual, the Shaykh, because he really goes into it and explains that we're not this is tafsir. What you're doing is tafsir. So his conclusion is, he said, if we're going to put the Quran in another language, what we have to do is we have to have a panel of people. And he doesn't mention the King James Bible. He just says we have to have a panel of people. You have to have scholars from different disciplines, and like fiqh and usul and language and so forth. And then you have to have the Arabic text has to be there, right? And he recommends Hafs al-Asim because it's the most popular, it's the easiest one. And then on the side, you just say, this ayah means this.
Yeah.
This ayah means that. That's the way to do it. This ayah means this. This ayah means this. You explain it like that, and you make it clear. You make it clear that your translation, whatever you want to call it, your tafsir, is dependent on the text itself. Yeah. Right. Like the translation does not replace the text. Right. Because again, this is something he talks about. He says, look at the Bible. People think that because they think that their translation replaces the original. I have the King James Bible. I don't need to go anything else. That's why you hear these funky statements where people say, like, what's wrong with English? It was good enough for Jesus.
Hilarious. I debated I had a short debate with a Christian guy the other day, and I said to him, what language did Jesus speak? He said like Syriac or Syriani or whatever. I said, yeah. So what language is the Bible in? And he said, I read it in English, right? So I was like, so you don't have the Bible of Jesus? He said, no, we have it. We just translated it, right? As if translation is a direct carbon copy, just different, like a lens or a different shade of color, right? So there's like no concept that when you translate it over something that you lost meaning. And that's going to happen to people who don't know two different languages and have never tried to translate an idiom. Like all throughout my youth, and probably every ethnic kid who grew up with a second language, you've had to translate to your non-ethnic friends an idiom, and it just doesn't come out right? Why you're laughing at this joke, okay? You got to translate an idiom, and you realize idioms can't be translated, expressions can't be translated, things like that you can't just click it over into another language and get the same result, right? So. But you could have some explicit tafsir. Like, for example, when you said, وَرَبَائِبُكُمُ اللَّاتِي فِي حُجُورِكُمْ, right, your stepdaughters who are in your homes. Okay.
Yeah, comma.
Yeah, comma. But it's really your stepdaughters who would tend to most likely live with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Be living with you. Yeah. That would be an explicit tafsir in the book. Right, so that way you wouldn't even call it a translation of the Quran. You would say the meaning of the Quran, right? This is the verse, and this is what it means. It's not a direct translation, right? This is what it means, and that's probably more accurate. And you get away with a lot more, and you're able to do a lot more, right? When a person does that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the way forward, and I think we have to, because what Shaykh Mahdi gets at,
Yeah.
and the man that follow him is that we cannot allow what happened to the Bible to happen to the Quran, where people think that the translation takes the place of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's very, very exact about that. He says, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't put it out, and then the title says the Quran.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you should say clearly that the title, like, this is a translation of the Quran, or the meanings of the Quran, or right, and that we cannot allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I always put forth in my books, like all the stuff I'm translating, whatever it is, I'm not trying to replace Arabic. I'll help you, but Arabic, whether it's the Quran or anything else, it's not replaceable. It's not replaceable.
In your course on this and in your master's thesis, are you going into the fiqh of these? Because they're ayat al-ahkam. So which fiqh are you relying upon if somebody asks that question? Saturday when you come and do this, for example.
Okay, so I'm a Shafi, but I do quote the four schools as best I can. So I have a Shafi book of Usul, a Shafi book of Ayat al-Ahkam. I quote Imam Al-Qurtubi, obviously, Qadi al-Arabi, because those are just gems. I mean, when it comes to Ayat al-Ahkam al-Quran. And then Al-Jahid for the Hanafis.
Who?
Al-Jahid.
Jahid. Okay.
No, not Jahid. Sorry. Jassas.
Jassas, yeah, because Jahid is the Mu'tazili author.
Yeah. I'm getting confused. Sorry, Hanafis. But the Jassas, Imam al-Jassas, Bukhr al-Jassas, I relied heavily on him. And then I also looked at, so I also use Ibn Kathir heavily, obviously. I use Imam for the Hanbalis, especially, I use Imam Abdul Halim al-Jawzi, his Elmasry fi Tafsir. Fakhr al-Razi, that's just indispensable. Or fiqh, and for the lugha, just like his commentary on language is just sublime. Who else? And then some of the modern tafsirs as well. So I use like Sabuni, Imam As-Suyuti of Tafsir, his book on I think it's called Rawat al-Bayan on Ayat al-Ahkam. I also use Imam Wahb al-Zuhayli's giant one, the Tafsir al-Munir. Which is about 17 volumes. That's fantastic tafsir. That's absolutely fantastic tafsir. So to get a well-rounded picture, like these are the Mufassirun, this is what the Mufassirun say. Like, because that's what I'm trying to get at. Like if you're putting out the meaning of an ayah is this, and Imam Kathir and Imam Al-Qurtubi and Imam Fakhr al-Razi and they all disagree with you.
Yeah, somehow. How about Ibn Ashur? Did you come upon him?
No, I'm not sure. No.
Yeah, as people
Maybe
praise
in a future edition.
Yeah, people praise his tafsir a lot, although it has some things that are, questionable. But the rest of it is people praise it a lot. Like for example, he has very questionable comments on muta. Like his conclusion on muta is bizarre. From a Sunni Maliki to say what he said about muta, right? It's ajib. And also, and other things too. But otherwise, they say that every scholar makes a mistake, and this was a big mistake. But otherwise, his tafsir is really thorough and covers a lot of things in it. So this is going to be Saturday. The book on this, is it published or not yet?
There's an Arabic summary of it online. I think I sent you the link a couple months back. But there's a summary of it published by a journal in Jordan.
Okay.
But it's all in Arabic. I don't know if I might put it in English one day, but that would be kind of interesting.
So you did this in Saudi?
Yeah. It was my thesis in Jeddah. Okay. Yeah.
It'll be an amazing book to have in English, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if it's critiquing the translations, right? Then the English audience needs that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's the word needs to get out about that, and why there should be a translation that's done with a panel of people and it's done the proper way with the metin there, with the original Arabic text there.
Or I think they should just do the translation of As-Suyuti's Jalalain, As-Suyuti and Mahalli. Just translate the Jalalain, because that gives you right. Because frankly, I never read translations. The only translation I could ever read was Abdul Halim's, but every other translation, something about it just really puts you to sleep and doesn't engage your mind at all. It's almost like it's not fitting. Something about the translation. Whenever I go to an event, the translation part of the event is always the worst part, right? there's something wrong with the flow. There's just something not clicking. The Abdul Halim translation is the first one that I felt has a flow to it, and I could actually listen to this. Yeah.
I use the Bewley one. I should probably I use that one because obviously when I do my translation work, I have to have some sort of translation I like to use for the ayat. That's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think translating, like if you're going to put a translate ayat by ayat, that's okay, and it fits the context of a book. Like this is what Allah is saying.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously for the overall translation, it just can't be done. It just can't be done. But to give credit, like one of the things I like about the Bewleys, but credit, and this is what sets them apart in many ways from other people is they actually say what tafsirs they're using. They say what qira'ah they're using. Like go back to what Imam As-Suyuti said about qira'at, right? Like, tell us what qira'ah you're using.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to assume you're using Hafs?
Yeah.
Right. So like the Bewleys, they'll tell you, they say, listen, we're using Warsh and Nafi', right? That's the ayah numbering. That's what we're using. And we're using Al-Kalabi, we're using Al-Qurtubi, we're using right. Okay. That like help us.
Yeah.
But these other translations, it's just like they don't tell you anything. They're just okay.
Straight
the
to
Quran.
it. Hey Omar, can you please hand me the Shaykh Nuhs translation? I want to see if he has an intro in this. When someone enters Islam and wants a Quran, do you give him one? Translation, do you give him one?
Good question. Again, I would probably give them if I put in that situation. I probably would give them the Bewley translation. I think that's probably the safest in my view. But again, like the mistakes I mentioned earlier, they're there, right? Like those two ayat, like the 24 and Surah Al-Nisa and Surah Al-Nur, they're there. Those same mistakes. Even, and again, like I said, Ibn Kathir says in his tafsir of Surah Al-Nisa, ayah 23, he says, there's no mafhum, not mafhum Allah in this ayah. And then he quotes Surah Al-Nur ayah 33. It's the same thing, right? It's just, which is weird. So, I don't want to gainsay or denigrate people's efforts, but this is quite.
No, the whole point of why our religion survives is because it's out there and it's all for constant review and constant check. If people had to shut their mouths, a mistake would last forever and people would build on that mistake. When a new Muslim comes, I prefer not even to give him a Quran translation because it's confusing for somebody who doesn't understand it in the English, and there are ahkam that they may totally mess up. So what I prefer, and I still haven't figured this out yet, is I want 100 to 200 page biography of the Prophet for beginners. It's one of the things that I wanted to write. Right? First seerah book. Biography of the Prophet that would be for beginners or for like youth and new converts. Like at that level, that reading level, that is a biography of the Prophet ﷺ. Mingled with it is Shama'il. Mingled with it is principles of Aqidah and Sharia. Right? So it's all mingled in. So that if this is the first book a person is given, the fundamentals of Aqidah are there. Okay, which is relevant to the Seerah because the first ayat of Mecca were those verses. Fundamentals of Sharia are there in Medina because you're not going to just talk about wars and dawah, who converted and who fought and who got captured. In between that, there was a lot of things happening, such as revelation of ayahs. And then Shama'il has to always be mixed in there too because the Prophet was always meeting people, talking, and they were observing him. That was happening too in Mecca and Medina. And that would basically be 120, 150 pages that really has the vitamins or let's say the fundamentals of everything in it as in the form of a seerah. And I think that would be the best thing for a brand new Muslim, right, to read. Far more useful for him. I can't say anything is superior to the Quran, even the translation of the Quran, but it's far more useful than a translation. Because I guarantee you, if I open up a translation here, it's just something's going to jump and you're not going to understand it. And the Quran, as it is in Arabic, can do that. It can jump from one voice to another voice, from one subject to another, because you'll see in the beauty of the wording, right? The beauty of the language will allow for that and will even distract you from trying to find structure to it. And that's the miracle of the Quran in Arabic, which doesn't translate in English. So 10 o'clock in New Jersey time. This will not be broadcast. It will not be streamed, but we will, inshallah ta'ala, be doing this for Arkview students another time, not now. And maybe a shortened version because no one can stay in front of the computer for so long. It's going to kill you. But we do plan.
We will do breaks, right?
Oh, yeah. You guys, everyone who comes, you all know where the restaurants are. You should order some food and do these things, get lunch and have some breaks. But for those who are asking about having this online, not this time. The onliners will have its own event. Oftentimes, an on-site event that's streamed doesn't have the same flow for the onliners as it does, especially when audience members are talking, etc. So,
yeah.
Okay, let's take questions now from YouTube and from Instagram and from our live audience here. Okay. As I'm looking here at Shaykh Nuhs' introduction, I should read it actually. Very interesting introduction to the book. It's pretty long actually. Yeah, it's pretty long. I'm just looking at the headers of his introduction here. Yeah, I want to read it. Themes of the surahs. This is actually very useful. He has a chapter on themes of the surahs where he goes through all 114 surahs and he gives you a paragraph on the theme of the surah, right? Which is interesting, but of course it's never going to be encompassing. Just interesting. And then I like the way in which he translated this, where he has the whole page of Quran and then the whole page of translation, and it's on the printing or the codex of the Medina Mus'haf, which was by Uthman Taha, so that you could actually do. You know what I wish he had also done here? Would have been amazing. In the corner, if he put what page it would be on in the Medina Mus'haf, which most people read on, and even the codex has been sold. So the Syrians publish with that. The Turks, a lot of countries and different publishers use that same mushaf that's around 600 pages, 20 pages a juz. Every page ends with an ayah. That's what's known as the Medina Mus'haf, and it was first written like that by Uthman Taha. And there's a whole short documentary on how he did it and how he is actually the first person to do this. It's an achievement. 20 pages a juz. Every page ends with an ayah. No carryover into the next ayah. So it would be interesting. It would have been nice if he had put in the corner there what page the Arabic is in relation to the Medina Mus'haf. So in any event, let's now turn to comments and questions. Yes, go ahead. Relative to this.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So someone's asking, will Shaykh Mahdi put together a panel of people, including himself, to translate the Quran?
You want to do it?
Did you hear me?
Do I want to what?
His mic wasn't on.
Do you hear my?
The question said, will you put a panel together and get a translation of the Quran?
Well, like a tafsir of the Quran in English.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about it, but I mean, I haven't made any concrete steps. No, I have so much on my plate in front of me.
Yeah.
So many other projects in mind. I think I'd rather have people learning more Arabic, but yeah, I think it's something that could be done. But I haven't made any concrete steps towards it.
It would be a massive project to put together the Sunni study Quran, right? Because the study Quran was based on the study Bible, right? And the publisher had published a study Bible. Then I guess they had the study Torah, the study Gita, right?
Yeah.
But then the study Quran. But we end up needing a Sunni study Quran. And that would be great, where each verse gets a more extensive treatment beyond just a translation. That's what the concept of the study Bible is, or the study Quran is, right? An issue with the study Quran was that it went through all the theological schools, which is fine because they do tell you Shias say this or so-and-so says that. That's fine, right? But what they don't tell you is wherever they stick in their perennialism, they'll never say, and the perennialist school of thought says this, or the perennialists
Yeah, that's
whatever.
That's mainstream Islam.
Yeah, they present it as if that's the overarching absolute.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, there are valuable things in it if you want to see a comparison of what the different theological schools say. And I don't have much reason to think that they were incompetent in transmitting that. I think they were competent and they knew how to transmit things, but it was not a question of competence, but a question of ethics. The way they brought forth the perennial philosophy as like the truth, not cornering it into a perspective, saying this is our belief, or this is the perennialist persuasion states X, Y, and Z. And for every ayah that came across the exclusivity of Islam, they always say, see Lombard's appendix on the subject, right?
Yeah, because he's the marja, right?
Yeah. So that's why if anyone comes upon a couple, I would say maybe 100 grand. For 100 grand, you can give part-time jobs to scholars, young scholars, and one veteran over them, right? To produce a Sunni study Quran, it'll take 7 years, maybe 5 years. Sunni study Quran, $100,000 and 7 years, right? That's what it'll take. $100,000 is not even a lot of money, right? Some people make that in a month, right? And that's a bad month for them. It's true. But in any event, next question. Is it better to study grammar and then move to speaking? You studied so much Arabic. Is grammar better than studying speaking or reading? So you have studying grammar, you have reading, and you have speaking.
Okay.
Guide the new learner.
Yeah. Well, it depends on your intention. It depends on your intention. If your intention is to read the classical books, or just not the classical books, the books of the map, whether it's this age or the previous age, then obviously your intention, your focus is grammar. Your focus is grammar and vocabulary. That's what you want to get down, and you want to know how to use the hands of your dictionary. So that means you have to know sarf, you have to know the verb patterns, the judhur and the awzan. You need to know these things, the root letters of words. You know that, so you can use the dictionary. You can identify what a verbal sentence is, what a normal sentence is, what an idafa is, what prepositional phrase is. That's for reading. Again, if your intention is speaking, then that's different. If you're going to go to the Arab world, you want to speak to people, or you're planning on being on Arab TV or something like that, then you're going to have to get into, then speaking is going to be more important for you. Because again, because you understand also there's different levels of Arabic here, because we're talking about, we have what we call the Fusha. The classical Arabic is what you find that's the language of the Quran, and that's the books that's the Hadith, that's the books of the man. Then you have what's called Al-Arabi al-Mu'asir al-Qiyasiyya, modern standard Arabic, which is the language of Al Jazeera, and that is and in the modern Arab press, which is close. You can study that and jump up to Fusha. That's not difficult, but it does have a lot of weird weird expressions, because they're just hack translated from English, right? They're they don't really make any sense. For example, they'll use expressions like yal'abu dawran.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
like playing
terrible.
a role.
That is so terrible.
Which doesn't make sense, right? Because playing a role is comes from English, because English has a history of theater. Yeah. Right. So someone can play the role of matchmaker, someone can play the role of mediator, whatever it is. But like in Arabic, they're just saying yal abu dawran, and they're using daw, which comes from daj, which means a circle. Yeah. So it's like he's playing a role. They
should say yaqumu maqam.
Exactly. Like he was fulfilling, or like wadif or something like that. He had the function of, or the so that's the thing. And then you also understand that there's the dialects, right? There's the Egyptian dialect, there's the Moroccan dialect, there's the Syrian dialect, and you can like that's what you would study if you wanted to learn. So like when I went to Morocco for my year abroad, they taught us the Moroccan dialect for a month, because they're like, this is what you're gonna need on the streets. This is what you're gonna need when you go places, right? Because if you go around speaking Fusha, people might be impressed, but they might not even understand you. No, right? So you want to be able to say to people like you want to be able to use these kind of expressions. So it all comes down to what your intention is. It's interesting. I was having a conversation last night with my colleague at the Ark Academy over here.
There's two Arks, by the way, folks.
Yeah. So this is what's called. You guys use the Arabic name. They use the English name, Ark. So I was with Shaykh Salah Al-Abbas. We were talking about this last night, and he said that, you know, a good tip is, like if you want to, when you get to the Arab world, you know, if you are to go, let's say you are to go there to study, right? But so so you want to have your classical Arabic for your classes, because obviously when you study, your teachers will be using, you know, like Fusha Arabic, because that's what the books in that language and so forth. But you want to get around and start talking to people. Don't be shy to talk to people because you don't know, you don't think your grammar is so sharp. No, if you want something on the street, just go for it. Just go for it. So he said, for example, the best example of this, right, is if you go to places, especially because I lived in Jeddah, the people who have no shyness about speaking Arabic are a lot of the migrant workers, like the Pakistanis, the Indians, the Bangladeshis. They speak Arabic.
Yeah.
Seriously, they speak Arabic, and it's an Arabic that you used to get by. It's not grammatical, right?
But they made it happen.
They might.
Yeah.
They made it happen. So they'll say, for example, like they want to say, like, what good are you? They'll say, ma fayda anta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's like, what good are you?
Yeah.
Or they want to say, like, are you not a human being? Like,
Yeah.
ma fi insan anta.
Yeah.
Right? But those expressions like fi and ma fi, right? Because fi is just a truncation of the classical khabar muqaddam, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
في الغرفة ولد, you know, في المطعم كذا وكذا, right? So you can get by in somewhere like Jeddah just saying fi and ma fi.
Yeah.
Like, it's here, it's not here. You
Yeah.
can get by.
Yeah.
Someone asks you a question, because if someone asks you a question, you say ma fi. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have the answer, it's not there,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Someone asks you, yeah, fi. You can get by. So that's the thing you have to understand, is like, don't be so shy. And again, Arabs, especially the ones in the East, not the Moroccans, the ones in the East, like, again, like Egypt, these kinds of places, they're not going to be they're not going to like laugh at you or mock you. They'll see that you're trying. They'll see that you're trying.
Yeah.
The people who do mock, and I think part of the phobia of this, I've noticed in England. I don't know what you guys are like in. I was theorizing. This is a big theory I have. I was theorizing the other day about the shyness of trying to pick up Arabic, and I found a culprit. It's the French. It's the French. Okay, because the French, because again, in America, I know you guys learn French and Spanish, don't you? It depends on your school, because I guess also you have far more Spanish speakers. I grew up in Canada. We had to learn French at school. England, they learn French at school. And I think you have choice of German and Spanish. But the thing about the French is the French are so, like, particular about their language. And then if you try to speak French to a French person, or you go on holiday to Paris, Allah help you, and you try to speak to those people, they'll laugh at you.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to speak their language, they laugh at you. They'll insist, that you speak their language, and then you try to speak their language, they'll laugh at you, and they'll laugh at you like the tiniest mistakes. Like, you said "peu" but not "peu." Like,
Yeah.
they right? And I think that psychologically, that kind of that deflates you, and you start thinking, I can't speak a foreign language, right? Whereas if you go to, I noticed this as well. Like the Morocco, when I lived in Morocco, like the Moroccans, they kind of like inherited that from the French. So like you start trying to speak Fusha Arabic with a Moroccan, they start acting French with you.
Wow.
Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to speak Arabic? Like whereas like when I was in Jeddah speaking Arabic, people just loved it. People just accepted it. They just like, great, like, you're speaking our language, and they don't care about the little mistakes, and you didn't have a bomba, you didn't have a fatha there, and you forgot your med. They don't care. You're clear.
When
right?
I go to,
yeah, go ahead.
When I go to the Gulf, I feel that there's so many Desis there, and they have
exactly.
developed a new dialects. I think the
it is. That's what
Desi
I'm
Arabic
saying.
is a new dialect, right?
Yeah, ma fa'id anta.
Yeah. So let me take one more question here from a questioner before we log off. Which masjid do you teach at in Bradford? Or do you frequent, or do you have any activity in public in Bradford? In the public sphere?
Wow, someone in Bradford spying on me. Okay. In Bradford, I just teach Arabic at Ark Academy. That's the main place where I teach Arabic Ark Academy.
And that's a physical place people could walk into, sign up.
Yeah, that's a physical place. And the classes I do are online and on site. So there are people who come actually there to the place and study Arabic with me. But I put up the Zoom and the microphone to set everything up. And so I've got some people from the US. I've got people from Singapore, people from Holland, people from different parts of the UK.
MashaAllah.
So that's I'm not affiliated to anything like particular masjid. And then as I started recently, like I do go around to different cities to give talks and workshops and presentations, stuff like that, and promote my books and these kinds of things. So yeah.
Okay.
But
Very good.
I'm not tied to any particular masjid now.
MashaAllah. All right. So we will see you getting ready to host you here on Thursday, inshallah ta'ala. And then
Inshallah.
again, if you are in the area, Friday evening, talk on depression and anxiety. Okay. Reasons.
What time is that going to be, by the way?
That's going to be at 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah, 7 o'clock all till Maghrib. And then maybe we're going to have a Q&A after, or some refreshments afterwards. And then Saturday is the big day. We won't take you too much of your energy and time Friday, because we know Saturday you'll still be getting over the jet lag, and then you'll have 10 to 5 on Saturday. So I hope to see everyone there. Again, that's not going to be online, but in the future we will have a type of event where that is solely online for Arkview students. If you want to study and take classes, you go to arkview.org and you could take Arkview Basic and Arkview Plus, depending on what your needs are. And inshallah, starting in September, Shaykh Mahdi will be leading the Arkview Arabic. It's going to be a break-off by itself. Arkview Arabic, where people who go there will be dedicated to studying Arabic online, and it'll just be Arabic, nothing else, no distractions. Many hours of live classes, division of levels, material, quizzes, examinations, and he'll really take care of you and build you up. So, jazakumullahu khairan, everybody. Shaykh Mahdi, thank you so much, and we'll wait for you on this side of the ocean, and see you Thursday. Inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Aşkınla arasında yıldızlar kadar zikredin. Uslat şarabından için şu canı aşkla versinler. Ya kalbe şifa